The winter sun had barely risen over the east side of Cleveland when 9-year-old Janelle Parker stepped onto the cold floor of the small bedroom she shared with her little brother. The outdated heater hummed weakly, blowing out air that was warm only if you stood directly over the vent. She tugged on her worn sweater, rubbed her hands together, and tiptoed through the hallway so the floorboards wouldn't wake their mother. The house was quiet, too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that comes from exhaustion from a parent who worked too much and slept too little. The kitchen felt colder than the bedroom, and as she opened the refrigerator, the hollow echo inside told her what she already feared. The dim light flickered, revealing almost nothing on the shelves. A mustard bottle. A jar with the last bit of spaghetti sauce clinging stubbornly to the sides. A plastic container that once held leftover potatoes. She checked the door shelves, just pickle juice. Her heart tightened. She took a breath and forced herself to stay calm. Caleb would wake up soon, rubbing his eyes and dragging his favorite blanket across the floor. He would be hungry, and hungry always led to crying. Not mean crying, he was only 5, but the sad, exhausted kind that made Janelle feel like she had failed him somehow, even though she wasn't the parent. She closed the fridge slowly, pressing her forehead against the door for a moment. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "We'll figure it out." She grabbed a cup, filled it with tap water, and took a sip. The metallic taste made her wince. The pipes in their duplex needed fixing, but the landlord kept promising he would get to it soon. They all knew soon never came. From the living room came a soft cough, then another. Janelle hurried toward the sound. Her mother, Danielle, lay curled on the old couch, bundled under 2 mismatched blankets. Her dark skin glistened with a sheen of sweat, and each breath seemed heavier than the last. The shadows under her eyes looked deeper than yesterday. Her hair was still pinned in the messy bun she wore to her shift at the nursing home. She hadn't changed clothes after stumbling in late last night. "Mom?" Janelle whispered. Danielle didn't open her eyes fully, only cracked one eyelid. "Baby, is it morning already?" "Yeah." Janelle knelt beside her. "You okay?" "Just tired," her mother murmured, pressing a hand to her stomach. "I'll be fine after I rest a little." Janelle didn't believe that. She hadn't believed it all week. Something had been wrong, but her mother pushed through every shift anyway. If she missed work, they couldn't pay rent. If they couldn't pay rent, she swallowed the thought. "Do you want water?" she asked. Danielle nodded weakly, and Janelle got up to fetch the cup she had been drinking from. She rinsed it, filled it again, and brought it back. Her mother drank 2 small sips before setting it on the side table. "Where's Caleb?" "Sleeping." Danielle managed a smile. "Good. Let him rest. I'll make breakfast soon." "You need to sleep," Janelle said softly. "I can't. I'm already 2 hours late. If I call out." She couldn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Janelle touched her mother's hand. "Just rest. I'll take care of things." Danielle's eyes softened with a mixture of pride and sadness. "You shouldn't have to take care of everything, Janelle." But she already did. The truthful part, the part neither of them said aloud, was simple. There was no one else. As her mother's breathing steadied and her eyes drifted shut again, Janelle stood and returned to the kitchen. She opened the fridge one more time as if new items might magically appear. Nothing. Her stomach twisted. Caleb shouldn't start his day hungry. And milk wasn't just breakfast, it was all they had left from the food pantry box they'd received last week. If she had milk, she could stretch it with instant oats. She didn't. She pulled open the drawer under the microwave, digging past old receipts and coupons. She hoped maybe, somehow, they had one more dollar tucked away. Her fingers brushed something soft, an envelope. The electric bill. Not paid yet. She kept digging. Finally, she found 2 wrinkled dollar bills. That was all. She stared at them for a long moment, weighing her options. $2 was not enough. Milk at the little market down the street cost more than that, almost 4. But she couldn't let Caleb cry from hunger. She couldn't watch her mother drag herself out of bed and force her body through another shift on an empty stomach. Janelle squeezed the bills tightly. "Maybe the man at the counter will let me pay the rest later," she whispered to herself. "I'll explain. He'll understand." Her mother, half asleep on the couch, had told her many times that the world doesn't give you anything for free. But she wasn't asking for free. She was asking for time. She picked up her coat from the hook, noticing the seam on the right sleeve had come undone. It didn't matter. She wrapped a scarf around her neck, slipped her feet into the same shoes she wore to school, and checked on Caleb one more time. He was curled up, thumb in his mouth, breathing softly. She brushed a hand over his hair. "I'll be right back," she whispered. "I promise." The air outside slapped her cheeks with biting cold as soon as she stepped out. Snow from last night's flurry crunched under her feet, and a wind gust pushed against her small frame. She pulled her scarf tighter and walked quickly toward Martha's Market, the small corner store that had been there longer than she had been alive. The neighborhood around her looked worn, peeling paint, sagging porches, broken gutters, but familiar. She passed old Mr. Henderson's rusted truck, Mrs. Turner's faded mailbox, the alley the kids used as a shortcut during summer. Everything felt asleep under the cold gray sky. As she approached the market, she took a breath, preparing herself for the conversation she hoped would go well. The bell chimed as she pulled the door open, letting in a gust of icy air. The warmth inside hit her at once, along with the smell of fresh coffee. She walked to the dairy section and picked up a small carton of milk. She checked the price tag again. Still $3.89. Her heart sank. She stepped to the counter, clutching the carton with small, cold fingers. The cashier, Mr. Lopez, looked up from the lottery tickets he was sorting. "Morning, sweetheart," he said kindly. "Cold out there, huh?" She nodded. "Yes, sir." Her voice trembled slightly. He glanced at the milk, then at her coat, then at her nervous hands. "That all for today?" She nodded again and placed her $2 on the counter. Her heart pounded as she finally forced the words out. I only have this. But I promise I'll pay the rest when I grow up. I really need the milk for my brother." The store went quiet. Mr. Lopez froze. A couple customers in line leaned closer. And behind her, someone who wasn't supposed to be there, someone who would completely alter the course of her life, heard every word. A tall man in a long gray coat stepped forward, watching her with an expression she couldn't decode. And that moment, that single, fragile moment, was about to change everything. Jordan stepped out of his penthouse elevator just after dawn, the city still yawning awake beneath him. The hall lights flickered softly, but inside he felt none of the warmth they cast. Every morning used to begin with a decisive stride, a mind full of meetings and strategies and outcomes. Today his steps dragged as though each one asked why he was still trying. The hush of the corridor wrapped around him, pressing against the quiet storm inside. He tightened his coat more out of habit than need. His driver waited downstairs, but Jordan waved off the thought of calling him. He wanted to walk. He wanted the cold air to numb the places his thoughts couldn't reach. Outside, the city greeted him with a gray sky, clouds hanging low as if they understood his burden. He passed through the revolving doors and stepped onto the sidewalk, hands deep in his pockets, eyes fixed ahead. Cars rolled by. A bus hissed at a stop. A vendor arranged pastries behind a steaming counter. Life continued, indifferent to his unraveling. He moved toward the courthouse, not because he wanted to but because he had no choice. Today was the hearing that could distort everything he'd built. The lawsuit had grown teeth, accusations of negligence, mismanagement, fraud. Lies dressed as truth, crafted by people who stood to gain from his downfall. He wasn't frightened of the fight. He'd won harder ones before. What shook him was the possibility that this time, he'd be facing it alone. His lawyer, someone he'd trusted for nearly a decade, had suddenly withdrawn the night before, claiming professional conflict. No explanation, no apology, just a brief message left on Jordan's phone. It was like being shoved overboard right when the waves were rising. He had tried to tell himself it was a mistake, but the sinking in his chest said otherwise. He reached the courthouse blocks earlier than necessary. Instead of going inside, he walked past it and stopped near a small park. The benches were cool with morning dew. He sat down, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. For a moment, he didn't look like the man whose name commanded boardrooms and headlines. He looked like someone holding himself together by thin threads. People passed by without noticing him, some rushing to work, some walking their dogs, some scrolling through their phones. He appreciated that anonymity. It made him feel less like a target, even if for a short while. He closed his eyes, inhaling slowly. "You've survived worse. You'll get through this," he told himself. But the words felt hollow. A rustle of plastic bags caught his attention, followed by quick footsteps. Someone slowed down near him, close enough for him to sense it. Jordan opened his eyes. A girl stood a few feet away, brown-skinned, thin, wrapped in a jacket that was too big for her. Her braids were tied back with a worn ribbon. She looked no older than 13 or 14. In her hand was a small grocery bag. She kept staring at him, not in a rude way, but in a way that suggested she was trying to figure out something important. He met her eyes for a second, expecting her to look away. But she didn't. "You look sad," she finally said, her voice gentle but clear. Jordan blinked, a bit surprised. "I'm fine," he replied automatically. But she only shook her head. "No, you're not." Her certainty disarmed him. Children rarely spoke to adults with that kind of confidence, especially strangers. Jordan tried to straighten his posture, adjusting his coat as if that could hide the truth she had somehow seen through. "It's nothing you need to worry about," he said, trying to close the conversation. But the girl stepped closer. "My mom says people say they're fine when they're not. She says you can always tell by the eyes." Jordan exhaled slowly. He wasn't used to being read so easily. "What's your name?" he asked. "Amara." The name suited her. Steady. Bright. "Shouldn't you be heading to school?" he asked. She lifted the grocery bag slightly. "Gotta drop this off at home first. Mom's not feeling well today. I'll go after." He nodded. Something tugged at him, an echo of familiarity, of a time when responsibilities weighed heavier than childhood should demand. It softened his tone without him intending it. "Well, thank you for checking," he said quietly. But Amara didn't move. She kept studying him, brows pinched slightly, as if trying to understand what kind of sadness she'd stumbled upon. "Did someone hurt you?" she asked. Jordan almost laughed, the question so innocent yet so sharp. "Not the way you mean." "Then how?" He hesitated, debating whether to brush her off. But something in her eyes, earnest, unfiltered, made him answer. "Someone I trusted left me when I needed them most," he said. Amara considered this. "Grown-ups do that a lot," she murmured. "But it doesn't mean you deserved it." Jordan felt a strange warmth in his chest. He wasn't used to comfort, especially from strangers, especially from children. His world was filled with people who wanted something from him, never someone who simply offered kindness without an angle. "That's very wise of you," he said softly. She shrugged. "Just what I learned." He studied her more carefully now. There was strength in the way she stood. Not loud strength, quiet, lived strength. The kind forged from having to grow up faster than others. "Are you heading far?" he asked. "Just across the street." She pointed toward a row of older apartment buildings. "We live on the 4th floor." Jordan nodded. "You should go before your mom worries." Amara glanced at the courthouse in the distance and then back at him. "You're going there, right?" He stiffened. "Why do you say that?" "You keep looking at it," she said simply. "Like you're scared of what's inside." He hadn't realized he'd been glancing that way so often. "Something important is happening today," he admitted. "Do you have someone going with you?" she asked. Jordan paused. For a moment he thought of lying. "No," he said instead. "No one." Amara's face softened with concern. She hugged the grocery bag to her chest. "Then, maybe just pretend you're not alone," she said. "Sometimes that helps." He smiled faintly. "Pretend how?" Amara thought for a second. "Imagine good people beside you. Even if they're not there. You stand straighter, you breathe better. That's what I do when school scares me." Jordan nodded slowly. The simplicity of her advice pressed gently against something knotted inside him. "You're very strong," he said. She shrugged again, but this time her small smile revealed she appreciated the acknowledgement. Before he could thank her again, she took a step back. "I have to go now. Mom's waiting." Jordan nodded. Take care of her. I will, she said. Then, I think you'll be okay. Maybe not today, but soon. There it was, that innocent certainty again. He felt it settle inside him like a small anchor. Amara turned and started toward the apartment block, her pace quick but light. Jordan watched her until she disappeared behind the entrance door. He didn't know why the encounter lingered so powerfully. Maybe because she'd seen something in him others pretended didn't exist. Maybe because her words felt like a hand reaching through the fog around him. He rose from the bench slowly. The courthouse suddenly seemed less intimidating, not because the stakes had changed but because he no longer felt quite so hollow walking toward it. But just as he approached the crosswalk, something caught his eye, a shadow moving quickly behind a column near the courthouse steps. Someone watching him. Jordan slowed, heartbeat tapping a little faster. The day had barely begun, yet the sense of danger was already awakening around him. If someone was already watching, what else was waiting? The bell above the door gave a soft metallic jingle as someone stepped into Martha's Market, shaking off the cold. Janelle didn't turn at first. She was too focused on standing tall at the counter, clutching her 2 wrinkled dollar bills like they were the last precious thing she had in the world. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears as she waited for the cashier, Mr. Lopez, to respond. He hadn't answered yet. He was still staring at her with that sad, heavy look adults sometimes gave when they didn't know how to tell the truth gently. Then a voice behind her broke the silence. It wasn't the voice of someone rushing in for a soda or grabbing a snack before heading to work. It was deeper, controlled, the voice of a man used to being listened to. Is something wrong? Janelle turned slowly. The man standing in line was tall, wrapped in a neatly pressed charcoal coat that probably cost more than her entire apartment's furniture. His hair, dark with strands of silver, was combed back in a way she had only ever seen in news interviews or on billboards around Cleveland. His gloves were leather. His shoes shone even though snow still clung to the sidewalk outside. She didn't know who he was. But he didn't look like he belonged in Martha's Market. Mr. Lopez blinked, recognizing him first. Good morning, sir. I didn't realize you were in town. The man gave a faint nod, his expression unreadable. Just passing through. He looked down at Janelle then, really looked, and his brow lowered slightly, not in annoyance but in something closer to concern. Mr. Lopez cleared his throat. She's trying to buy a gallon of milk. Janelle stiffened. She didn't want a stranger hearing her business. She didn't want anyone thinking she was begging. And, the man asked calmly. She only has $2, the cashier finished quietly. It wasn't meant to embarrass her, but the words still struck like a slap. Janelle tightened her grip on her bills so hard the edges curled against her palm. She could feel the stranger's eyes on her. Heavy, assessing, thoughtful. But he didn't pity her. At least it didn't feel that way. His expression was too focused, almost as if her situation stirred something inside him he hadn't expected. Janelle lifted her chin. I said I'll pay the rest when I grow up. The man's gaze softened with something she couldn't read. Surprise, curiosity, and maybe something deeper. He took a step closer, careful not to overwhelm her. What's your name? He asked. Janelle. And why do you need the milk so badly today, Janelle? She hesitated. Telling strangers about her brother felt too personal. Her mother always warned her not to share too much. But the cold morning, the empty fridge, Caleb's sleepy voice asking about breakfast, all of it pushed the words out. It's for my little brother, she said quietly. He didn't eat last night. The man inhaled slowly as if steadying something inside himself. His eyes flicked to the milk on the counter, then back to her. Without another word he pulled out his wallet. Janelle immediately stepped back. I don't need charity, she whispered, her voice small but stubborn. I said I'll pay when I grow up. I keep my word. Mr. Lopez opened his mouth to reassure her, but the stranger lifted his hand slightly, signaling him to wait. He kneeled down to meet her eye level, a gesture no one expected. I believe you, he said gently. And I'm not giving you charity. I'm helping you keep your promise early. Janelle blinked. The distinction confused her, but something in his tone, steady, warm, certain, made her pause. Still, the weight of pride tugged at her. But, I don't know you. A faint smile touched his face. My name is Samuel. Samuel Whitford. The name rang faintly familiar. Janelle had heard it somewhere, maybe on the news? Or maybe on one of those big digital billboards downtown her class saw during a field trip. But she didn't know who he really was. To her, he was just a stranger with expensive shoes kneeling in front of her like she mattered. Samuel stood again and placed the exact amount of money on the counter. Add the milk to my bill. Mr. Lopez nodded slowly. He had never seen the man behave like this, especially not in a place like their struggling neighborhood market. Janelle's stomach tightened. But I said. I heard what you said, Samuel replied softly. You'll keep your promise someday in your own way. That's enough. He slid the gallon of milk toward her. Janelle stared at it, then at him, unsure whether to accept it. It's just milk, he added lightly. Everyone deserves breakfast. There was no pressure in his voice. No judgment. Just sincerity. Janelle finally wrapped her fingers around the handle. Thank you, she whispered. Of course. But he didn't step away. Not yet. Something about her composure, her bravery, her refusal to look weak, even when she clearly needed help, stirred memories he had buried for decades. It reminded him of a little boy he once was, standing in a store much like this, promising he'd pay for bread when he grew up. He had never forgotten that moment. Or the stranger who helped him. Mr. Lopez handed Samuel his receipt. You didn't have to do that, he murmured. Samuel's reply was quiet, almost distant. Maybe I did. Janelle started toward the door, milk in hand, eager to get home before Caleb woke. But before she stepped outside, Samuel called after her. Wait. She looked back nervously. Is your home far from here? No. About 8 blocks. That's a long walk in this cold, he said, glancing at the frost forming outside. At least let me walk with you. Make sure you get home safely. Janelle hesitated. Her mother told her not to trust strangers. But something about Samuel didn't set off the alarms she was taught to listen for. He wasn't forcing. He wasn't hovering. He was simply offering. Mr. Lopez watched her carefully, ready to intervene if she showed discomfort. Janelle swallowed and nodded once. Okay. Just to the corner. Samuel's small smile showed he understood the boundary. They stepped outside together. The wind hit them immediately, sharp, unforgiving. Samuel tucked his hands into his coat pockets as they began walking down West 47th Street, the cold biting at their faces. For a few seconds neither said anything. Then Samuel asked quietly, Do you always come alone to buy groceries? Her hand tightened on the milk. Only when Mom can't. And today, she couldn't? She shook her head. She was really tired this morning. Samuel didn't respond right away. But the worry in his eyes deepened with every step they took. He noticed how carefully Janelle walked to avoid slipping, how she kept glancing toward home as if afraid something might change the longer she stayed away. Janelle, he said softly, is everything okay at home? She opened her mouth to answer, but at that exact moment, a loud cough echoed from the nearby alleyway. Samuel immediately stepped in front of her. The sound came again. And again. Janelle recognized it instantly. Her heart dropped. That sounds like my mom. Samuel looked at her sharply. Your mother is outside? Janelle didn't know. She didn't understand. But she didn't wait for another question. She ran toward the sound. Samuel followed. And when they reached the corner, they both froze. Because what they saw standing there in the snow made the milk nearly slip from Janelle's hand. Her mother, swaying, gasping, and on the verge of collapsing. For a heartbeat, Janelle didn't move. The world around her seemed to freeze, the snowflakes drifting in slow motion, the quiet hum of a distant bus, the faint rattle of a shopping cart someone pushed across a parking lot. Everything stilled except the shaking figure ahead of her. Her mother. Danielle stood at the corner, one hand pressed against the brick wall of a closed laundromat. Her shoulders rose and fell in rapid, irregular breaths. Her face, always warm and full of life even on the hardest days, was pale now, almost gray beneath the morning light. Mom? Janelle whispered, her voice cracking. The moment the word left her, Danielle's knees buckled. Janelle sprinted forward, nearly dropping the milk as she tried to catch her. Samuel reached her in 2 long strides, moving faster than she expected for a man in a tailored coat. He slipped an arm around Danielle just in time, steadying her before she hit the ground. "Danielle?" he said gently, though he had never spoken her name before. It came out instinctively, with concern that felt strangely personal. Danielle tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper emerged. "Can't breathe." Samuel glanced at Janelle. "We need to get her sitting. Now." They guided Danielle toward the short concrete ledge by the bus stop. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, each one sounding worse than the last. Her eyes fluttered, unfocused, as if she were seeing only flashes of the world around her. "Mom, I told you to rest," Janelle cried, tears forming. "Why did you come outside? Why didn't you stay in bed?" Danielle tried to respond, but the words dissolved into another violent cough that shook her whole body. Samuel knelt beside her. "How long has she been like this?" Janelle wiped her face on her sleeve. "She's been tired for days. She barely sleeps. She keeps saying she's fine, but she wasn't eating much and she looked dizzy last night." Samuel's jaw tightened. His instincts, sharp, studied, trained by years of making decisions under pressure, snapped into place. "Janelle," he said calmly, "your mother needs help. She needs to see a doctor immediately." Danielle shook her head weakly. "No. I can't. Hospital. We can't." "This isn't optional," Samuel said, his tone still gentle but firm. "You're in danger." Janelle touched her mother's hand, horrified at how cold it felt. "Mom, please. Please listen." But Danielle's breathing worsened. Her eyelids fluttered again and her head dipped forward. Samuel stood. "I'm calling an ambulance." Danielle reached out, gripping his sleeve with what little strength she had left. "No bills, no bills." Something in Samuel's face changed, something deep, hidden, almost wounded. He lowered himself again, looking her straight in the eyes. "You let me worry about the bills," he said quietly. "Right now your children need you alive." The conviction in his voice hit harder than the cold wind sweeping down the street. But before either of them could respond, Mr. Lopez hurried out of the store carrying Janelle's beanie and gloves she had forgotten on the counter. When he saw Danielle collapsing against Samuel, his expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "What happened?" he gasped. "Is she okay?" Samuel didn't look away from Danielle as he answered. "She's not stable. We need emergency care." Mr. Lopez fumbled for his phone. "I'll call for help." Before he could dial, Danielle gripped Samuel's wrist again. "Please, don't make a scene. People will talk. They'll think I can't take care of my kids." Her voice cracked in shame. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between Samuel and her. Something about pride, dignity, survival. Something he knew all too well. He turned to Mr. Lopez. "Hold off on the call for 1 second." The cashier hesitated. Janelle stared at Samuel, confused. "What are you doing?" "She needs help." "She does," Samuel agreed. "But I know what it's like to fear losing everything because you step into a hospital without insurance." The words came out low, as if tugged from a place he rarely exposed. "She won't go unless she trusts us," he added. Janelle swallowed. Samuel wasn't dismissing the danger. He was trying to calm her mother enough so she wouldn't fight the help she needed. He looked at Danielle again. "I'm going to take care of this. You're not alone. But you need to let me get you to a doctor." Danielle stared at him, the well-dressed stranger who had appeared out of nowhere, her breath still uneven. "Why, oh, would you help us?" she whispered. Samuel didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted to the snow-covered street, the flickering street lamp still glowing though morning had broken, the old houses lining the block, houses he once knew too well. Finally he said, "Because someone helped me once. And I never forgot." Nothing more. No grand explanation. Yet the honesty in his voice made Danielle's resistance weaken. Still, her coughing worsened, doubling her over. That decided it. Samuel stood abruptly. "Mr. Lopez, call the ambulance." This time no one stopped him. Janelle held her mother close. Mom, please hang on. Please don't close your eyes. Sirens were still distant when Samuel removed his coat and wrapped it around Danielle's shoulders, shielding her from the biting cold. He didn't seem to care that the freezing wind cut straight through his dress shirt. People from the neighborhood began to notice the commotion. The man kneeling in the snow, the little girl crying, the cashier trying to keep calm. 2 passers-by slowed down, murmuring questions. She okay? What happened? Should someone check if she's breathing right? Janelle felt the panic rising, the fear that the world was suddenly watching something she didn't want anyone to see. Samuel sensed it instantly. Stay close to your mom, he murmured. I've got the rest. He stood up and positioned himself in front of Danielle and Janelle, shielding them from the growing crowd. His imposing frame and calm authority made people step back without him raising his voice. When the ambulance finally turned onto the street, lights flashing, Samuel exhaled with visible relief. The EMTs jumped out, quickly assessing Danielle, taking her vitals and asking questions. Is she responsive? How long has she been coughing like this? Any existing conditions? Danielle's answers were slurred, her focus slipping with every second. She's been pushing herself too hard, Janelle choked out. She never rests. The EMT nodded sympathetically. We need to get her on oxygen and transport her. They lifted Danielle onto the stretcher. Janelle's breath hitched in fear as her mother's head fell to the side. I'm going with her, Janelle insisted, stepping forward. One EMT nodded. You can ride with her. It's okay. Samuel placed a hand on her shoulder. I'll follow behind you. Janelle looked up at him, eyes wide and brimming with questions. Why are you helping us so much? Samuel hesitated. A shadow crossed his expression, one that held years of secrets and unresolved pain. Before he could respond, one EMT suddenly glanced at Samuel and froze, recognition flickering across his face. Wait, aren't you? Samuel raised a hand quickly, cutting him off with a firm but silent plea. Not now. Not in front of Janelle. Not while Danielle clung to life. The EMT swallowed and said nothing more, but suspicion spread through the crowd like electricity. People whispered. Heads turned. A couple pulled out their phones. Someone murmured, Is that who I think it is? Another whispered, What's he doing here? Janelle looked around nervously. Why are people looking at you like that? Samuel didn't answer. He couldn't, not without revealing something he wasn't ready to explain. The ambulance doors closed. The engine roared to life. And as the vehicle pulled away, Janelle pressed her face to the glass, watching Samuel grow smaller in the distance, while the whispers behind him grew louder. And none of them were good. The ambulance sped down Carnegie Avenue toward Cleveland Clinic, its lights reflecting off the wet pavement in streaks of red and blue. Inside, the siren's wail seemed to shake the air itself. Janelle sat beside her mother's stretcher, her small hand gripping Danielle's cold fingers as tightly as she could. Danielle's eyes fluttered open for a moment, unfocused. Her voice came out as a faint whisper. Baby, don't be afraid. I'm not, Janelle lied, her voice trembling. Just, don't stop talking, okay? But Danielle's eyes closed again. One of the EMTs, a woman with a calm face and soft voice, leaned closer. She's still with us, sweetheart. You're doing great. Just keep holding her hand. Janelle nodded, though her chest felt tight as if fear itself had wrapped around her lungs. When the ambulance doors burst open at the hospital entrance, a team of nurses rushed out, immediately taking Danielle into their care. They moved with the practiced precision of people who had done this 1,000 times, yet their urgency made it clear, this wasn't something small. Ma'am, can you hear me? BP's dropping. Start the 4. She's going straight to triage B. The voices blended into a blur. Janelle stood frozen near the doors as Danielle was wheeled away, vanishing behind the white curtains of the emergency wing. Just like that, she was gone. The cold air from outside brushed over her skin as someone opened the sliding doors again, and she turned automatically. Samuel was walking in. His hair was dusted with snow now, his coat gone, and his breath sharp from the cold. He must have run from the parking lot. He didn't even look around to see who recognized him or whispered behind their hands. All he saw was Janelle. He hurried to her side immediately. "Where is she?" he asked gently. "They took her somewhere back there," Janelle said, pointing with a shaking hand. "They said something about her blood pressure. They didn't even let me say goodbye." "You'll see her again," Samuel murmured. "I promise." Janelle pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. She wasn't used to breaking in front of people, especially strangers. But this day had taken everything she had left. Samuel guided her to a plastic chair along the waiting room wall. The nurse at the desk kept glancing at him, recognizing him instantly, but he didn't acknowledge her. His entire focus was the trembling girl beside him. "Did they say what was wrong?" he asked. Janelle shook her head. "She's been dizzy, coughing a lot. Sometimes she gets these headaches that make her sit down for a long time. She said it was just stress." Samuel exhaled slowly. "Stress doesn't make someone collapse." Janelle's lips quivered. "If she had taken a day off work, maybe?" "None of this is your fault," Samuel said gently. "And it isn't hers either." A nurse called out, "Family of Danielle Bryant?" Janelle jumped to her feet. Samuel stood beside her, but when the nurse saw him, her eyes widened slightly, as if his presence made everything feel heavier, more complicated. "Are you her?" She looked between them. "I'm with her," Samuel said. "But her daughter speaks for the family." The nurse nodded and crouched down so she was at Janelle's height. "Your mother is stable for now," she said carefully. "We're running tests to understand what caused the collapse. She's exhausted, dehydrated, and her oxygen levels were very low." "Can I see her?" Janelle asked quickly. "Not yet, sweetheart. Give the team a little more time." Janelle's shoulders slumped. The nurse squeezed her shoulder and walked away. As soon as she left, Samuel noticed the way Janelle's face tightened, not just with fear, but with another emotion entirely. "Shame." "What is it?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then whispered, "They're going to ask her about insurance." Samuel didn't speak at first. He just studied her expression, the way her eyes dimmed when she thought about bills she had no power to pay. He recognized that look, because he had worn it himself once at her age. Finally he said, "Janelle, your mother needs care. And I gave you my word. I'm going to handle this." Janelle's eyes widened. "But you already bought the milk. You don't have to do more." "I know I don't have to," he said gently. "But I will." She looked down at her worn shoes, processing his words as if they were too big, too heavy. When she finally lifted her gaze again, there was something new in her expression, hope mixed with fear. "Mom always said that too much kindness has a price," Janelle whispered. "She said people don't give without wanting something back." Samuel's face softened, but his reply was steady. "Then let me show you she was wrong about that." Janelle wasn't convinced. She watched him carefully, her eyes narrowing with the quiet wisdom of someone who had learned too early not to trust easily. "What if you're being nice because you already knew who I was?" she asked suddenly. Samuel blinked, caught off guard. Why would you think that?" "In the ambulance," she whispered, "one of the EMTs looked at you like he recognized you. People outside the store were staring at you too." A shadow flashed across Samuel's face. Janelle continued quietly, "And you said someone helped you once, but you didn't say how. Or what. Or who." Samuel exhaled, a long breath he seemed to have held for years. He looked toward the hallway where Danielle had disappeared, then back at Janelle. "You're right," he said softly. "There's more I haven't told you." Janelle's heartbeat quickened. "Like what?" Samuel glanced around the waiting room. Too many people. Too many years. Too many curious eyes watching him. "Not here," he said gently. "I'll explain everything. But I need you to trust that you and your mother are safe first." Janelle studied him silently, searching for any hidden angle, any sign of danger. But all she saw was sincerity, and something haunted in his eyes. Before she could respond, a security guard approached, walking with purpose. "Sir," the guard said firmly, "I need to speak with you for a moment." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Is there a problem?" The guard lowered his voice. "A few people outside think they recognized you. They've alerted administration. We need to confirm your identity." Janelle looked between them, confused. The guard continued, "If you are who they say you are, we have protocol we must follow. High-profile cases need clearance." Janelle froze. "Who do they say he is?" she whispered. Samuel closed his eyes briefly as though bracing for impact. The guard hesitated, then answered aloud. "A billionaire." Janelle's breath caught. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds of Daniel Whitford's penthouse, illuminating the quiet stillness that always greeted him when he woke up alone. For years that silence had felt like a companion, predictable, unchanging, safe. But today it felt different. Heavy. Restless. As if the quiet itself were holding its breath, waiting for him to admit something he wasn't ready to name. He sat at the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, rubbing his temples. He barely slept. His mind kept replaying the same moment. A little girl in oversized shoes, clutching a milk carton like it was treasure, staring at him with eyes full of a trust he had done nothing to deserve. "Thank you, mister. I promise I'll pay you back when I grow up." Her voice had followed him through his dreams, lingering long after he woke. He showered, dressed, and made coffee on autopilot, but every part of him felt suspended, caught between the life he'd always lived and the life that seemed to be tugging at him from the corner store aisle where he met her. By the time he walked into his office at Whitford Industries, he felt even more unsettled. His staff, always polished and punctual, sensed the shift immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Whitford," his assistant Elaine said, stepping beside him with her tablet. "You, look like you need stronger coffee." He gave a weak huff that might have passed for a laugh. "Something like that." "Rough night?" He paused before answering. "Just thinking." Elaine blinked. "You? Thinking? I'd better alert the press." He didn't smile. Not fully. But there was a flicker. She noticed because Elaine noticed everything. He settled at his desk, but instead of opening financial reports or drafting emails, he stared at his own reflection in the black screen of his computer. Behind that reflection, he saw the fluorescent-lit corner store, the milk, and a small hand gripping his. Something pulled at him, an ache he hadn't felt in years. Something like responsibility, or maybe something softer. He didn't want to sit with it. He stood abruptly. "I'll be back. Hold my calls." Elaine tilted her head, surprised. "Are you going somewhere?" "I need to check on something," he said. "A business matter?" He hesitated. "Something like that." She tried to hide her concern, but it flashed across her eyes. "Of course, sir." He left before she could press further. Outside, the autumn air in downtown Chicago was crisp and bright. Cars honked, buses rumbled, people hurried along the sidewalks, but Daniel heard none of it. His thoughts were too loud. He drove without telling anyone where he was going. Without a driver. Without security. Instinct guided him more than logic. 15 minutes later, he pulled into the rougher, older stretch of South Haven, where narrow brick buildings leaned against each other like tired shoulders. The contrast with his usual world was stark, yet he didn't turn back. He parked near the same corner store, the same cracked sidewalk, the same faded sign humming faintly in the breeze. As soon as he stepped inside, the store owner, an old man named Mr. Kowalski, froze behind the counter. "You're back," he said, suspicious but relieved. "Did you forget something?" "Yesterday," Daniel asked. "The little girl, the one who bought the milk. Do you know her?" Kowalski nodded slowly. "She comes in here sometimes. Her family's been struggling since her mom got sick." Daniel stilled. "What kind of sick?" Kowalski sighed. "The kind that keeps you in bed for weeks at a time. The kind that leaves bills unpaid." Daniel swallowed hard. "Do you know where they live?" The man hesitated. "Sir, people around here don't always trust strangers, especially rich ones." "I understand," Daniel replied quietly. "I'm not here to judge them. I just want to help." Something in his tone softened the old man's expression. Finally, Kowalski wrote down an address on a scrap of receipt paper and slid it forward. "If you're serious, this is where they stay. Don't go in with big speeches. Just be kind." Daniel took the paper. "Thank you." The house sat at the end of a narrow street, small, weathered, and missing patches of paint. A sagging porch. A broken railing. A mailbox hanging crooked. But there were signs of life. A jumble of chalk drawings on the walkway, a jump rope left on the grass, a small teddy bear propped against the step. His chest tightened. He hesitated at the door. He wasn't good at this. He didn't know what to say. He'd spent years building companies, negotiating with investors, handling multi-million-dollar crises. Yet knocking on this door felt like the hardest thing he'd ever done. He raised his hand and froze when he heard voices from inside. A child's voice. Then a woman's, weak, strained, but gentle. His breath caught. Slowly he knocked. There was a shuffle inside, then silence. Another shuffle, then the sound of the door unlocking. The door cracked open 2 inches. A woman's face peeked through. She looked exhausted, pale, hollow-cheeked, worn down by far more than illness. Yes. Daniel cleared his throat. My name is Daniel. I met your daughter yesterday. The woman's eyes widened in confusion, then fear. What? What happened? Is she okay? She's fine, he said quickly. She's more than fine. In fact, she helped me more than she knows. The door opened a little more. Enough for him to see the small living room behind her, tidy despite the worn furniture, clean despite the lack of resources. Then he saw the girl, standing by the couch, holding the same teddy bear he noticed outside. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw him. It's you, she said, running to the door with a bright smile. The milkman. Daniel's heart twisted. He swallowed the lump rising in his throat. Her mother looked between them, confused. What's this about? I just, Daniel said softly, wanted to return something she gave me. Her mother blinked. She didn't give you anything. Oh, she did, he said quietly. Hope. The mother flinched, caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice. He continued, I don't want to intrude. I just wanted to see if you needed anything. Groceries. Medical care. Transportation. I can arrange support quietly. No publicity. No strings. He could feel the woman's pride fighting against her exhaustion. We're managing, she whispered, though her voice trembled. Daniel gently shook his head. No one should have to manage alone. The little girl tugged her mother's sleeve. Mama, he's nice. He bought me milk. The mother let out a breath, torn. Sir, we don't take handouts. It's not a handout, Daniel replied. It's a thank you. For what? She asked softly. For reminding me what kindness looks like. Silence stretched between them. The woman finally stepped aside, opening the door fully. You can come in. Daniel took a step, then froze when he noticed movement behind the couch. A shadow. A tall figure. A man. He stepped into view, his face cold, unreadable. And Daniel realized instantly that he had not been announced. He had not been expected. And this man did not look pleased to see him. The little girl's smile faded. The mother stiffened. And the man spoke, his voice low and quiet. Who exactly are you, and why are you here with my family? Daniel felt the air shift. Something was very wrong. For a split second, Daniel forgot how to breathe. The man who stepped out from behind the couch wasn't just tall. He carried an energy that filled the room with quiet tension. Broad shoulders. Stiff posture. A stare sharp enough to slice through drywall. Something in his expression made it hard to tell whether he was protective or dangerous, or both. The little girl shrank back slightly, as if used to reading moods she shouldn't have had to measure at her age. Her mother swallowed hard, her fingers lightly brushing her daughter's back in reassurance. Daniel straightened, trying not to show the sudden pulse of caution running through him. My name is Daniel Whitford, he said evenly. I'm a friend. The man's eyes narrowed. Friend? I don't know you. And you don't know us. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. The mother stepped forward quickly, trying to soften the rising tension. James, he's the man who helped Maya yesterday. The one she told us about. Maya? Daniel repeated in his mind. Finally, a name. The name fit her. Gentle but strong. James didn't look comforted. I see. So you helped her once and now you show up at our house? What for? Daniel's throat tightened. He wasn't used to being questioned. Not like this. Not by someone who wasn't impressed by wealth or status. But he reminded himself why he came. To make sure your family is okay, Daniel replied. I wasn't trying to interfere. I just wanted to offer help. James stepped closer, blocking part of the doorway. Do we look like a charity case to you? No, Daniel said calmly. You look like a family who deserves support. There's a difference. James flinched, as if the unexpected respect in that statement threw him off balance. But only for a moment. We don't take anything from strangers, James muttered. Especially rich ones who think they can walk into people's lives and fix everything. The mother touched his arm gently. James? He pulled away, not violently, more like someone who carried too much weight and didn't know how to set it down. I'm not here to fix anything, Daniel said, lowering his voice. I'm here because your daughter's kindness meant something to me. And because I know what it's like to grow up needing help and having no one show up. That last line slipped out before he could stop it. James blinked. The mother's expression softened. Even Maya looked up at him as if she sensed something quietly broken behind his words. A beat of silence stretched between them. The mother finally nodded. Why don't you sit down for a minute? James stiffened. Sarah? Sit, James, she said gently but firmly. Please. The authority in her tone was subtle but undeniable. James reluctantly stepped back, though his eyes never left Daniel. Daniel entered the house slowly, careful not to intrude more than invited. The living room was modest, worn sofa, old television, a coffee table with scratches, but clean and thoughtfully arranged. There were small details that spoke volumes about the family. A stack of library books, homework pages, a jar of pennies and nickels labeled, for Mama's medicine. His throat tightened again. Maya hopped onto the sofa, legs dangling, clutching her teddy bear. Mama's medicine is expensive, she said innocently. Sometimes we need more things, but Mama says we're okay if we have each other. Sarah gave her a soft, proud smile, though her eyes glistened with exhaustion. Daniel turned to her gently. Are you getting treatment? She hesitated. Her gaze dropped. On and off. I lost my job a while back. The bills? Well, they don't exactly pause just because life gets heavy. Maya looked up at her mother with worry she shouldn't have needed to carry. Mama, do you need more medicine today? Not today, sweetheart, Sarah whispered. But her hand trembled slightly. Something twisted deep in Daniel's chest, an old pain he thought he buried long ago. Memories of hospital rooms, past due notices, and a single mother who had worked herself into the ground trying to keep him fed. He swallowed hard. I can help. With the medicine. With groceries. Whatever you need. James cut in sharply. And what do you want in return? Daniel blinked. Nothing. No one gives nothing, James said quietly. The world doesn't work like that. Sarah shot him a warning glance. James, please. He exhaled, frustrated. I'm just trying to protect you and Maya. Daniel studied him for a moment. The tension. The defensiveness. The exhaustion beneath the anger. James wasn't hostile for sport. He was terrified. Terrified of losing control. Terrified of letting someone in. Terrified that one wrong decision could shatter everything. Daniel understood that more than he wanted to admit. I'm not trying to replace anyone, Daniel said softly. And I'm not trying to make myself feel good. I'm offering help because I remember being that child. He nodded toward Maya. And I remember wishing someone, anyone, would notice. The room went quiet. Sarah's eyes filled with quiet emotion. Maya looked puzzled but sensing the heaviness in the air. James's posture shifted slightly, still guarded but no longer outright hostile. For a moment, Daniel thought the tension was easing. Until a loud knock shook the front door. Everyone froze. Sarah frowned. Who? James stiffened. They're early. Who? Daniel asked. Another knock, harder this time. James stepped toward the door, jaw clenched. Stay here, he muttered. But Maya ran to her mother instead, gripping her arm tightly. Mama, is it those people again? Those words sent a ripple of alarm through Daniel's body. People? He whispered. Sarah didn't answer, her lips pressed together, her eyes darting away. James opened the door only a few inches. A man in a gray uniform stood outside holding a clipboard. His tone was flat, rehearsed. "We're here for a property inspection. Missed payments again. We need to assess the home." Sarah's shoulders slumped. James stepped halfway out, blocking their view inside. "We need more time." The man didn't budge. "You're out of extensions. If payments aren't caught up, eviction moves forward." Maya clutched her mother tighter. "Mama, what's eviction?" Sarah swallowed hard. "Nothing, baby. It's nothing." Daniel's pulse kicked up. Eviction. That meant homelessness. That meant instability. That meant everything Maya feared but didn't understand. The inspector tried to push the door. "I need access." James held it firm. "You're not coming in today." "Sir," the inspector said coldly, "if you refuse entry again, it goes in the report. This will escalate." James's voice dropped into a tone Daniel recognized, a tone that comes from a man who's fighting battles no one sees. "I said not today." The inspector stepped back slightly, eyeing him. "We'll be back. With notice." He walked away, leaving a heavy, suffocating silence in his wake. James shut the door, locked it, leaned against it for a moment, eyes closed, shoulders sagging under the weight of a world he couldn't hold up alone. Sarah wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm sorry you had to see that." Daniel's voice was soft but firm. "How long has this been going on?" Sarah hesitated. James answered instead, his voice flat. "Months." Daniel looked between them, at the fear in Sarah's eyes, the helplessness tightening James's jaw, the confusion in Maya's face. This wasn't just financial struggle. This was crisis, and somehow, without meaning to, he had stumbled right into the middle of it. Before he could ask anything else, Maya tugged on his sleeve. Her voice was small, almost scared. "Mr. Daniel, what happens to us if we have to leave?" Daniel knelt slowly so he'd meet her eye level. Before he could respond, she whispered something that shattered him. "If we lose the house, will Mama die?" Sarah covered her mouth in shock. James's face cracked open with an emotion he had been fighting to hide. Daniel's heart clenched painfully. He didn't have an answer. Not yet. But as he stared into Maya's trembling eyes, he made a silent vow. He would not let this family lose everything. Not while he was here. Then suddenly, a loud bang erupted outside. Not a knock. Something else. James lunged toward the window and pulled the curtain aside. And his entire face drained. "What now?" Sarah whispered, terrified. Daniel moved closer. Then he saw it. A black SUV idling in front of the house. And two men stepping out. Not inspectors. Not neighbors. Not anyone who looked friendly. James muttered under his breath, "They weren't supposed to find us here." Daniel froze. "Find us?" Before he could ask, the men started walking toward the door. The quiet in the living room broke open like glass shattering. James stood frozen at the window, the curtain trembling in his hand. His face, already tense, shifted into something else entirely. Not anger. Not frustration. Fear. Real, unmistakable fear. Daniel followed his gaze. The black SUV sat in the middle of the narrow street like a dark omen, engine idling with a low growl that sent vibrations through the ground. Two men stepped out, one tall and lean, the other stocky with a heavy stride. Both dressed in dark jackets. No uniforms. No badges. Just a cold, purposeful certainty in their movements. Sarah's hand flew instinctively to her mouth. "No, no, no, how did they?" Maya backed into the couch, gripping her teddy bear so tightly her knuckles whitened. Daniel felt the air shift, pressing against his chest like a physical weight. He stepped closer to James. "Who are they?" he whispered. James didn't answer right away. His eyes darted from the window to the door, calculating, panicked but focused. "Stay back," he finally muttered. "All of you." Sarah reached for his arm. "James, you said we had time." "I thought we did," he muttered. "They weren't supposed to track us here." Daniel's muscles tensed. "Track you?" "James, what's going on?" James didn't answer. Outside, one of the men spoke into a phone, head tilted toward the house. The other scanned the street slowly as if mapping potential exits. Then, in perfect unison, the men started walking toward the porch. Every step seemed to echo through the living room. Tap, tap, tap. Daniel's instincts screamed that this was no ordinary visit. These men weren't here to negotiate. They weren't here for a polite conversation. Sarah backed toward Maya protectively, her voice trembling. "James, we can't let them in. Not again. Not again." The words chilled Daniel. He turned to James. "Tell me the truth. Who are they?" Before James could answer, bang, bang, bang. The door shook violently under the force of the knocks. "House inspection," one of the men called out mockingly. "Open up." The sarcasm in his voice revealed the lie. Daniel stepped instinctively in front of Sarah and Maya. "This isn't safe," he whispered. James exhaled sharply, every muscle tight. "They're not inspectors. They work for someone I used to owe." Sarah's face went pale. "Oh? James?" "No time," James snapped. "Hide Maya. Now." Sarah scooped the little girl into her arms, holding her close. Maya's breath hitched with quiet fear. Daniel moved beside James. "Tell me what they want." "Money," James muttered. "Money I couldn't pay back. I tried to keep Sarah and Maya out of it, but when I couldn't make the last payment, things got worse. They don't care about deals anymore. They just want control." "Control of what?" James swallowed. "Me." Daniel felt something cold crawl up his spine. James clenched his jaw. "I made mistakes. Stupid ones. I thought I could fix them before anyone got hurt. But Sarah, Maya, they don't deserve this." Bang, bang, bang. This time louder, harder, more impatient. "We know you're in there," one of the men barked. Sarah flinched. Maya buried her face into her shoulder. James stepped toward the door. Daniel grabbed his arm. "Don't open it." "I have to." "No, you don't. They don't get to dictate what happens in this house." James yanked his arm free. "You don't understand. If I don't answer, they'll break the door down. They've done it before." Daniel's gut twisted. "Then let me talk." James stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "You? These guys don't negotiate. They're not scared of police. They're not scared of anyone." "They should be," Daniel said quietly. "They just don't know it yet." James blinked, caught off guard by the steel in Daniel's voice. "Let me go out first," Daniel insisted. "If they think you're hiding, they'll only get more aggressive. But if a stranger answers, someone they don't expect." James hesitated. Sarah watched the exchange, breath trembling. James let him. "Please." She didn't look at Daniel with blind trust. It was something deeper. Desperation mixed with a fragile hope she didn't dare fully acknowledge. Finally, James nodded once. "Fine. But stay close to the doorway. If they try anything, step back." Daniel straightened, feeling a rush of adrenaline he hadn't felt in years. "Keep Sarah and Maya behind you." He approached the door. Another fist slammed against it, rattling the thin frame. Daniel took a breath, then opened it. The two men stopped mid-knock. Both froze, startled to see a stranger standing in the doorway instead of James. The tall one cocked his head. "Who the hell are you?" Daniel didn't flinch. "The homeowner's friend." "You don't live here," the stocky one said. Daniel shrugged. "Didn't say I did." The tall man stepped closer, invading Daniel's space with a practiced intimidation tactic. "We're looking for someone." Daniel's expression stayed calm. "And I'm telling you now's not a good time." The stocky man smirked. "We weren't asking permission." Daniel held his gaze. "Then let me save you time. He's not stepping outside." The tall man's grin spread slowly, darkly. "You think you're protecting him? That how this works?" Daniel didn't move. "I think the situation has escalated enough. You should leave." The stocky man crossed his arms. "And what are you gonna do if we don't?" Daniel exhaled once, steady. "You don't know who you're dealing with." The tall man laughed. "Buddy, that's the funniest thing I've heard all week." His hand lifted, reaching toward the door, testing boundaries. Daniel didn't allow it. He stepped forward just enough to make the man drop his arm. "A warning." The tall one sneered. Look, I'm not here for you. I'm here for the guy hiding in the back. So either step aside or... You're not stepping inside this house, Daniel cut in, his voice low, controlled. Not today. For a moment no one spoke. The wind rustled leaves along the curb. Somewhere down the street a dog barked. But in the small space between the doorway and the men, the air crackled with rising tension. The tall man leaned in so close Daniel could see the scar slicing across his cheek. You must not understand how serious this is. Oh, I understand perfectly, Daniel replied. You're on private property. You've made threats. You're harassing a family with a child. And you've just given me enough grounds to make a situation you won't walk away from. The stocky man narrowed his eyes. You think we care about legal crap? Daniel tilted his head slightly. I wasn't talking about legal. Both men stiffened. Something flickered behind their eyes, uncertainty. Then the tall man grinned again, though weaker this time. We'll be back. And when we come back, he better be ready. They turned, stepping off the porch. Daniel didn't look away until they got into the SUV. The engine revved. The vehicle slowed before pulling off. Then, without warning, it stopped halfway down the block. The tall man rolled down his window and shouted, "Tell James we know where he works now." Daniel's stomach dropped. They drove off. He closed the door slowly. Behind him, Sarah gasped softly. James stared at the floor, jaw clenched so tightly a muscle jumped in his cheek. Maya peeked out, eyes wide with fear. Daniel spoke first. What did they mean, where you work? James didn't answer. Sarah did. Her voice cracked. James lost his last job months ago. He hasn't been working anywhere. Daniel turned sharply. Then what are they talking about? James lifted his head. And the look in his eyes, dark, haunted, defeated, told Daniel that there was something he hadn't revealed yet. Something bigger. Something dangerous. Something that involved all of them. And before Daniel could press, James whispered the words that froze the room. They think I stole something from them, and now they won't stop until they get it back. Dawn crept in slowly, brushing the sky with pale strokes of gold and blue. The city was still half asleep, but inside Marcus Hale's penthouse, the atmosphere was anything but calm. For the first time since the trial began, the billionaire wasn't pacing, wasn't arguing with lawyers, wasn't reviewing documents. He sat alone at his marble dining table, hunched over a small rectangular object resting in his trembling hands, the little girl's phone. He had picked it up the night before when she ran away crying, too overwhelmed to notice she dropped it. Marcus had spent the entire night awake, wrestling with questions he wasn't ready to face. Why did he feel responsible for her? Why could he not push her away? Why did her simple words, "I'll protect you, Dad," echo in him like a haunting melody he couldn't silence? And now, as the morning light filled the room, something on the girl's phone screen flickered to life. A notification. One voice note. Recorded at exactly 2:14 a.m. Marcus's heart clenched. Did she try to call someone? Was she in danger? With a breath that trembled more than he wanted to admit, he pressed play. The voice that came through was small, fragile, and soaked in tears. Hi. It's me. I don't know what to do anymore. Marcus' breath escaped him in a broken exhale. I know you're mad, or maybe disappointed, or maybe you think I'm lying, she continued. But I told the truth. I told the truth because I'm scared they will take you away. And you don't deserve that. Not you. Marcus felt something deep within him collapse. The girl sniffled, a shaky inhale that sounded too familiar, too similar to the sobs he'd heard from her at the courthouse. They said kids like me shouldn't get involved in grown-up business. The lawyer said I should keep silent. He told me I'm making it worse. But I saw her. I saw what she did. I heard what she said. Marcus sat up straighter. His pulse sharpened. She saw someone? She heard something? His mind raced. Please don't be angry with me, she whispered. I didn't want you to lose. Because then you'd be alone again. And I know what that feels like. Pause. Long, heavy. When I left the hospital the day my dad died, I told myself I'd never get attached to anyone again. Never. But then I saw you sitting on that bench, looking like someone had taken the whole world from you. And I thought, maybe I could help you the way I wish someone helped my dad. Marcus felt hot tears gathering in his eyes. He pressed the phone to his forehead. He had never asked for this girl's help. He had never expected her loyalty. And yet here she was, confessing, hurting, protecting him in ways no one else had dared. Then her voice lowered into a frightened whisper. If anything happens tomorrow, if the judge believes the lie, you have to promise you won't give up. You have to fight. Because she's not who you think she is. She's not. Static. The recording glitched. A soft gasp. A hurried whisper. I think someone's following me. The message cut off. Marcus's blood ran ice cold. He replayed that last line again. And again. And again. I think someone's following me. He shot to his feet. This was no coincidence. Not a child's paranoia. Not an exaggeration. His lawyer, Gerald Vance, had been acting strange. Too calm. Too dismissive. Too ready to bury the girl's testimony. And his fiancée, the one at the center of the scandal, had far more to lose than Marcus ever realized. The girl had seen something they didn't want her to reveal. And now, she had disappeared into the night with no one to protect her. Marcus grabbed his coat, his car keys, and the phone. He wasn't letting another innocent person suffer because of him. Not again. Not ever. The streets were still quiet when Marcus reached the neighborhood near the courthouse, the last place she had been seen. He stepped out of the car, scanning the sidewalks, the alleyways, the dark doorways where shadows clung like secrets. Where are you? He whispered. As he walked deeper into the narrow lanes behind the courthouse, he spotted something near a drain, small, worn out, and heartbreakingly familiar. A red friendship bracelet. The same one she always wore. Marcus picked it up slowly, turning it in his hand like treasure. His heartbeat thundered. She had been here. She had been scared. And she had run. But where? As he stepped back, something else caught his eye. Faint footprints in the damp morning dust. Small. Barely noticeable. Leading toward the rear exit of the courthouse. He followed them. Around a corner. Past a broken fence. Across a narrow alley where a single street light flickered nervously. And then he froze. Because on the ground, just below the street light, lay something far more alarming than a bracelet. A man's tie. Expensive. Dark navy. Embroidered with initials. GV. Gerald Vance. His lawyer. Marcus's jaw tightened. The girl wasn't just missing. She had been near danger. His danger. And his own lawyer was somehow involved. Marcus looked down the alley, determination sharpening his gaze. In that moment, everything changed. This wasn't just about clearing his name anymore. This was about protecting the only person who had stood up for him when everyone else stepped away. He whispered into the quiet morning air. Hold on, kid. I'm coming. And then he took off down the alley, running toward the unknown. The morning sun had climbed a little higher, but the alleyway behind the courthouse remained dim, swallowed by shadows that seemed to whisper warnings. Marcus Hale stood there, gripping the navy tie embroidered with GV, the cold realization settling heavy on his chest. Gerald, what have you done? In all his years of business, Marcus had learned one devastating truth. The people who smile the brightest often hide the darkest secrets. But to think his own lawyer, the man who had sworn to defend him, could be involved in scaring or even following a child. That crossed the line into a territory Marcus had never imagined. He tucked the tie into his coat pocket and moved deeper into the alley. His steps were quick, controlled. But inside, his heart hammered like a man racing against fate. Every sound made him turn, every shifting shadow made his muscles tense. He didn't know what he was walking into, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't leaving without the girl. At the end of the alley stood an old municipal building, abandoned years ago after a fire. The windows were boarded. The walls were cracked. The entire structure leaned like it was tired of holding secrets. But there was something else, something small. A faint echo. A cry. Marcus froze. His breath caught. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear. But it was the unmistakable sound of a child trying, and failing, to stay silent. He stepped closer, letting instinct take over. Hello, he called softly. No response. But another quiet whimper broke through the air. This time closer. Marcus moved to the side of the building where a broken basement window left a gap big enough for a child to crawl through. And on the dusty ground outside it, tiny palm prints. Smudged like someone hesitated. Like someone was scared. Marcus dropped to one knee and looked inside. What he saw made his stomach twist. The girl, small, trembling, clothes dusty from the floor, was sitting with her back against a pile of old storage crates, hugging her knees and wiping tears with the edge of her sleeve. Kid, Marcus breathed, quiet, gentle. Her head snapped up. Her eyes, wide, terrified, glimmered in the sliver of light from the window. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't trust yet. So Marcus lifted both hands slowly, palms open. "It's me," he said softly. "I'm here." She didn't speak. She didn't cry out. But her bottom lip trembled, and she shrank deeper into the corner as if she expected trouble to follow her. Marcus leaned closer. "What happened? Did someone chase you?" The girl stared at him for a long moment before whispering, I didn't know where else to go." Marcus exhaled shakily. Of all the places in the world she could have tried to hide, she chose an abandoned basement, cold, dark, unsafe, because she felt she had no one. "You're safe now," he told her. But the girl shook her head violently. "No, I'm not. Not if he finds me." Marcus felt every hair on his neck rise. "Who?" he asked, and her answer nearly knocked the breath out of him. "The lawyer." Marcus gripped the window frame. "Gerald?" he whispered. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He told me to stop talking about what I saw. He told me it was dangerous, that if I opened my mouth again, he'd make me regret it." Marcus felt his pulse ignite with a rage he'd buried for years. "And what did you see?" he asked carefully. The girl swallowed, fear tightening her voice. I saw Miss Clarice, Marcus's fiancée, the woman accusing him. I saw her in the hallway that night." The girl's voice shook. She wasn't hurt. She wasn't scared. She was laughing, talking to Mr. Gerald. They were planning something. Marcus felt the world tilt. His fiancée, his lawyer, laughing, planning. "What were they planning?" he whispered. The girl wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "They said, once Marcus is out of the picture, everything falls into place." Marcus's blood turned to fire. He forced himself to stay calm for her sake. "It's okay," he murmured through clenched teeth. "You did good telling me." But she shook her head again. No, I didn't. Because when they saw me watching, I ran. And Mr. Gerald followed me." Marcus inhaled sharply. That explained the voice note. The panic. The cut-off message. "They can't find me," the girl whispered. "Because if they do, they'll say I'm lying. They'll say I made everything up. And I don't have anyone to fight for me." Marcus stared at her through the tiny window, this fragile child who had risked everything to tell the truth. And something in him shifted. For the first time in years he didn't feel like a CEO, or a billionaire, or a man under attack. He felt like a father. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "You're not alone. Not anymore." Her eyes widened slightly, hope, suspicion, disbelief blending together. "I'm going to get you out," Marcus said. "Right now." He reached his hand through the window. "Come on." The girl hesitated, staring at his hand like trusting him could either save her life or destroy it. But then, slowly, trembling, she reached out and placed her small palm into his. Marcus clasped it gently but securely. "Good," he said. "We're going to walk out of here together." He began helping her crawl through the narrow opening. But just as he pulled her halfway out, a sharp sound cracked the air. A footstep. Heavy. Deliberate. Marcus snapped his head toward the far end of the alley. A tall silhouette stood there. Cold. Still. Watching. The girl gasped. Her grip tightened around Marcus's arm. Marcus's heart pounded as he instinctively pulled her closer. The figure stepped forward into the faint morning light. And the breath caught in Marcus's throat. It was Gerald Vance, his lawyer. Smiling, calm, composed, chilling. "Going somewhere?" Gerald asked softly. Marcus positioned himself in front of the girl. The battlefield had just shifted. This wasn't about the trial anymore. This was about survival. Gerald Vance stepped fully into the alley, shoes clicking against broken pavement like he had rehearsed every sound. The morning light struck the side of his face, revealing a smile that didn't belong to a man caught stalking a child. It was the smile of someone who believed he had already won. Marcus's body went rigid. The girl clung to his sleeve, trembling hard enough that Marcus felt it through the fabric. Her eyes never left Gerald, her fear was too real to ignore. Gerald stopped several feet away, adjusting his cufflinks as if this were a boardroom meeting, not an abandoned alley where he had just cornered a terrified child. "Well," Gerald said, voice smooth, "this is unexpected." Marcus Hale, rummaging behind buildings like a fugitive. And with a child no less. Marcus didn't move. "Take one more step," he warned quietly, "and I swear." "Swear what?" Gerald cut in, raising an eyebrow. "You'll hit your own attorney? How do you think that'll play in court?" Marcus felt heat crawl up his spine, but he kept his voice steady. "You followed a little girl," he said. "Explain that." Gerald let out a soft laugh. "Followed? No, Marcus. I protect. The poor thing has issues. She imagines things." The girl flinched. "Imagines things." Marcus had heard abusers use those words before. "Really?" Marcus said. "Then why did she run from you?" "Children run from anything that scares them," Gerald replied calmly. "A stray dog. A shadow. Or maybe a guilty conscience." Marcus stepped forward, shielding the girl behind him. "Don't come closer," he repeated. "She stays with me." Gerald's eyes flicked to the child, observing her carefully, studying her reaction. His smile shifted, thinning at the edges. "You know," Gerald murmured, "you're putting a lot of trust in someone you met yesterday." "She's a child," Marcus said, "and clearly terrified." "Children lie," Gerald countered, "especially when someone encourages them." Marcus's jaw locked. Gerald was playing the long game, planting seeds like he always did, subtle, poisonous, effective. "Marcus," Gerald went on, "think rationally. This girl has been wandering the city alone. No guardian. No address. No proof of anything she says. She could be saying these things because she wants attention. Or worse, because someone told her to." The girl whimpered softly. Marcus felt something inside him break. "Gerald," Marcus said slowly, "step away." Gerald shook his head as if disappointed. "You always were too soft with strays," he sighed. "First that charity scandal, now this." Marcus cut him off sharply. "This isn't the courtroom. Drop the act." For the first time Gerald's smile flickered. Just for a second. Then, "I'm only here," he said, "to escort the girl back to safety." Marcus's voice hardened. "You mean back to silence?" Gerald lifted his chin. "Marcus, I'm trying to help you. The closer you get to this child, the more it looks like you're manipulating witnesses. Do you want to sabotage your own case?" "My case," Marcus said, "isn't the priority right now." "She is." Gerald sighed again, a teacher scolding a stubborn student. "Marcus, if the press gets photos of you sneaking behind buildings with a child, if anyone gets the wrong idea, this could destroy you. All you've built. Everything you are." "And what about what she's been through?" Marcus asked. Gerald blinked, a faint twitch betraying him. Marcus noticed. "You think she matters more than your reputation?" Gerald asked quietly. "Yes," Marcus replied without hesitation. That answer seemed to catch Gerald off guard. For the first time, the lawyer's expression cracked. Just slightly, but enough for Marcus to see the truth beneath the polished surface. And the truth was ugly. Gerald stepped forward again. "That child knows things she has no business knowing," he said softly. "Things that were never meant for her ears." The girl let out a choked breath behind Marcus. Marcus squared his shoulders. "She heard you and Clarice plotting to frame me." Gerald didn't flinch. Didn't deny. He only tilted his head as though amused. "Words," he said. "Kids misunderstand things all the time." "You covered it up," Marcus said. "You told her to stay quiet." Gerald's eyes narrowed, not with fear but irritation. "You're getting bold," Gerald said. "But boldness becomes recklessness when you don't think ahead." He took another step. Marcus stepped back, but not out of fear. He stepped back to gently pull the girl behind him, shielding her. "Marcus," Gerald murmured, "be smart. Give me the child. You'll touch her over my dead body." Gerald's smile sharpened. "If that's what it takes." Marcus's fists tightened. The alley felt tighter. Narrower. Like fate had pressed the walls inward. "You're not getting past me," Marcus said. Gerald raised a hand casually. Marcus, listen. That girl is troubled. She could say anything to ruin your life. You're too kind for your own good. That's why Clarice chose you. At that name, Marcus's temper flared. Gerald saw it, savored it. You think she ever loved you? Gerald said, laughing quietly. You were a stepping stone, nothing more. Marcus lunged. For the first time, Gerald stumbled back. The smile vanished completely. Marcus didn't strike him, but the energy shifted. Danger hummed between them. Gerald recognized the look in Marcus's eyes. A man who had nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind. Gerald lifted his hands slowly. Marcus, let's not make things messy. But behind the composure, Marcus saw it. Fear. Not for himself, but for what Marcus might do next. You're done, Marcus said through his teeth. I'm exposing everything. Gerald tilted his head. Are you? He whispered. With what proof? Marcus didn't answer, because at that exact moment, a siren wailed in the distance. It was faint but growing closer. Marcus stiffened. Gerald's eyes glinted. Ah, Gerald murmured. Seems someone already called the police. Marcus's chest tightened. Gerald smoothed a hand over his tie. You have a child with you. Alone. Hiding. No permission. No guardian. And you're already on trial for harm. The sirens grew louder. Gerald smiled, slow, victorious. Tell me, Marcus, who do you really think they'll believe? Marcus felt the girl grip the back of his coat in terror. The sirens screeched around the corner. Marcus turned his head just enough to see the flashing lights reflecting off the alley walls. Gerald whispered one last sentence, quiet, venomous. Game over. Marcus stepped back, shielding the girl as two police cruisers pulled in sharply. Doors slammed. Officers rushed out. Marcus lifted his hands slowly, protectively, as the girl hid behind him. But before he could speak, one officer shouted, Sir, step away from the child. Another raised a hand toward his holster, and Marcus realized he was surrounded. The flashing red and blue lights painted the alley in frantic colors, each pulse sinking deeper into Marcus's chest like a warning he couldn't outrun. The officers moved in fast, hands commanding, eyes already suspicious, bodies tense with the readiness to escalate. This was not the moment to breathe wrong. Sir, one officer repeated louder this time. Step away from the child. Marcus didn't move, not because he didn't understand, but because the small hand clutching the back of his coat wouldn't let go. The girl was shaking again, tiny tremors rippling through her entire frame. Every instinct Marcus had as a human being, not as a billionaire, not as a defendant, just as a man, told him to protect her. But the officers didn't see that. They saw something far more dangerous. Let me explain, Marcus said slowly, keeping his voice even. Hands where we can see them, the first officer snapped. Marcus lifted them higher. Gerald stepped back toward the mouth of the alley, adjusting his glasses like an onlooker admiring a show he had orchestrated. The girl, unable to stay hidden, peeked out from behind Marcus. One officer stiffened instantly. She's terrified, he murmured to the others. Gerald seized the moment. If I may, he said, stepping forward with calculated concern, this situation is more complicated than it appears. I'm Marcus Hale's attorney. Marcus's stomach twisted. Gerald's tone softened, gentle and persuasive, the voice he used in front of juries, journalists, donors. This child has been wandering alone for days, he said. No guardian. No address. My client, if I may bless his heart, sometimes makes impulsive decisions to help. But he isn't thinking clearly with the trial and all. Marcus clenched his jaw. A smear campaign crafted in real time. The officers turned their attention back to Marcus, tension rebuilding. Is that true? One of them asked. Did you take this child without notifying authorities? Marcus started to respond. But the girl stepped out more fully, clutching Marcus's sleeve. He didn't take me, she whispered. He found me. Her voice was thin but honest. One officer softened. Another narrowed his eyes. And why were you hiding? He asked her gently. The girl opened her mouth, hesitated, and then her eyes flickered toward Gerald. The lawyer didn't move a muscle. Yet something about the way he stood froze her tongue. Marcus felt her fear like a physical pulse against his arm. "It's okay," Marcus murmured. "Tell them." She shook her head. "I can't," she whispered. Gerald smiled faintly. The officer turned back to Marcus. "Sir, unless the child can clearly confirm she is with you willingly, this situation does not look good." Marcus swallowed hard. He needed to think, to breathe, to get this right. "I found her crying behind the building," Marcus said. "She was scared. She said someone was following her." Gerald cut in smoothly. "Children get scared. Marcus is under a tremendous amount of stress. You know how anxiety can make someone see danger where there isn't any." The officer gave Gerald a questioning look. "You're saying he's hallucinating threats?" "Not hallucinating," Gerald said, choosing his words with the precision of a surgeon, "but misinterpreting them." Marcus felt fire in his chest. "You followed her," Marcus snapped. "She said you threatened her." The officer's eyes flicked to Gerald. Gerald chuckled lightly. "Threatened? Officers, I saw the girl running near a restricted area behind the courthouse, so I tried to stop her before she got hurt. That's all." The girl tensed hard, her body language screaming that this wasn't true. But she was too terrified to speak. Marcus knelt beside her slowly, making sure the officers saw everything he did. "Look at me," he said softly. Her eyes lifted, watery and uncertain. "I know you're scared," Marcus whispered. "But no one here can help you unless you speak." Her bottom lip trembled. Her gaze flicked between Marcus, the officers, and finally Gerald. And that was enough to answer everything. She was terrified of the wrong man. Marcus stood and turned to the officers. "I want to file a report," he said. "This man," he pointed at Gerald, "shouldn't be anywhere near this child." Gerald scoffed. "A report? Marcus, please. You're panicking." The officers exchanged glances. One stepped forward. "Both of you, stop talking. Until we figure this out, the child needs to come with us." The girl gasped. "No, please. No police station. I don't want to go." Her plea broke something inside Marcus. But the officer's decision was firm. "She needs safety, medical attention, and an advocate. We can't leave her here." Marcus exhaled sharply. He understood, but it still tore at him. The girl pressed herself back against Marcus's side, shaking her head desperately. "It's temporary," Marcus murmured. "They won't hurt you." She didn't believe it. "Not yet." Gerald's voice slid back into the moment. "Officers, I'll accompany the child. Ensure no one." "No," Marcus said sharply. "He does not go near her." The lead officer held up a hand. "No one but authorized personnel will accompany her." Gerald's jaw twitched, just for a moment. The officer stepped forward to escort the girl to the cruiser. She clung to Marcus's sleeve until the last possible second. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking, "don't let him." The officer gently guided her away. Marcus stepped toward her, lowering his voice so she could hear only him. "I'm not done," he promised. Her eyes widened. A small spark, trust trying to survive fear. And then she was guided into the back of the cruiser. Gerald exhaled as though satisfied. "Well," he said softly, "that solves the problem, doesn't it? With her out of the picture." Marcus turned on him so quickly Gerald flinched. "This isn't over." Gerald recovered his composure quickly, offering a tight smile. "Marcus, you've already lost." Marcus leaned in, voice low. "No, you have. And I will prove it." For the first time, real worry flickered in Gerald's eyes. But before either man could take another breath, a second cruiser pulled up. This one was different. Unmarked. Dark-tinted windows. Government plates. The back door opened. A woman in a sharp blazer stepped out, flashing a badge. "Child Protective Services," she announced. "I'm the case supervisor. The girl you found, she gave us a name to contact." Marcus blinked. "A name?" Gerald stiffened. The CPS worker scanned the alley, then focused straight on him with a look that froze him in place. "We received a report involving you, Mr. Vance." Gerald's face drained. Marcus's pulse surged. The CPS worker turned to Marcus next. And we need both of you to come with us immediately. For what? She took a step closer. The girl disclosed something, and she only said 3 words after that. Marcus's breath caught. What words? He asked. The CPS worker glanced at him, then at Gerald, then back toward the cruiser where the girl sat trembling. She lowered her voice. She said, I saw everything. Marcus's heart slammed inside his chest. Gerald's mask cracked entirely. And the CPS worker added. And she named the place. Marcus's eyes widened. Gerald's shoulders locked. Before either man could speak, she pointed down the street. We're going there now. The sirens had quieted, but the tension hadn't. The air still felt electrified, as though the truth itself was crawling out of the shadows and demanding to be seen. Marcus walked beside the CPS supervisor toward her unmarked vehicle, each step heavier than the last. Gerald followed at a distance, stiff, controlled, but the panic in his eyes betrayed him. He wasn't expecting this. He wasn't expecting her to speak. They're bringing the girl to a safe interview room, the CPS supervisor said while opening her door. You'll wait in a separate space until we need statements. Marcus nodded, but Gerald attempted to step forward. I'll accompany. No, the CPS worker said firmly. You are not permitted near the minor at this time. Gerald's jaw twitched. I am her attorney. You're not her attorney, she cut him sharply. And until the allegations are addressed, you are to maintain distance. Marcus almost smiled. Almost. Gerald swallowed the insult, adjusting his posture, but the fight in his eyes dimmed. He knew this was spiraling out of his control. The CPS worker opened the back door of the unmarked car. Mr. Hale, you ride with us. Marcus nodded and stepped inside. As the door closed, he glanced out the window. Gerald stood alone in the alley, the flashing lights now gone, the morning light uncomfortably bright on his face. His smile, the weapon he'd used for years, had faded entirely. The car pulled away, leaving him behind. The drive wasn't long, but it felt endless. The CPS supervisor sat beside him, reviewing a small electronic pad filled with notes. Can you tell me where she said to go? Marcus asked. She mentioned a location, the supervisor said slowly, and according to her, it's where she first overheard things, and where she saw something that frightened her. Marcus's pulse picked up. What kind of place? The supervisor hesitated. She mentioned an abandoned house on Roosevelt Street. Said you'd recognize it. Marcus froze. Roosevelt Street. His breath lodged in his throat. He did recognize it. It wasn't just any abandoned house. It was a once beautiful Victorian home, now condemned. A property he owned. One he never visited. One Clarice was supposed to sell last year. Clarice, his fiancée. The one accusing him in court. His stomach dropped. What exactly did she say she saw? Marcus asked, voice low. The CPS supervisor tapped the pad. She said the woman and the man, she didn't name them in her statement yet, met there several times. And that one night she saw something fall. Something break. Something that made the woman scream. Marcus tightly clenched his hands. This wasn't good. Not for him. Not for the girl. Not for anyone. The CPS worker glanced at him carefully. You okay? Marcus nodded, though he wasn't. Do you know the place? She pressed. Yes, Marcus said quietly. It's mine. She blinked, stunned. Yours? I inherited it. Haven't stepped inside in years. The CPS worker exhaled heavily. Well, she said, we're about to step inside today. When they pulled onto Roosevelt Street, Marcus's chest tightened. The house rose up like a ghost, tall, dark, and swallowed by vines. Windows boarded. Porch sagging. A condemned sticker peeling off the front door. A second CPS vehicle had already arrived. 2 officers from Child Protective Services and a local police detective stood outside. As Marcus stepped out, one officer spoke up. She wouldn't come inside yet, he said quietly. But she pointed. Clear as day. Marcus followed his gesture. The girl sat in the back of the first cruiser, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the house with wide, haunted eyes. The moment Marcus stepped out of the car, she locked onto him. Not with fear. With urgency. As if she needed him to hear whatever she had held inside. The CPS case supervisor approached Marcus. She said the woman came here often, the supervisor murmured. That a big argument happened. That something, or someone, fell. Marcus felt cold creep up his spine. He stared at the house. Everything about it felt wrong today, too quiet, too still, too expectant. Can I talk to her? He asked. Briefly, the supervisor said. But gently. She's overwhelmed. Marcus nodded and approached the cruiser. When the girl saw him, she leaned forward immediately. Is it safe? She whispered. It will be, Marcus said softly. Her small hand slid out of the blanket. She pointed at the house again. That's where it happened. Marcus crouched down beside the open cruiser door. What did you see inside? The girl looked at the house, then back at Marcus. Your fiancé, she whispered. Every muscle in Marcus's body tensed. She was arguing with the lawyer, the girl said. She was yelling at him. She kept saying she didn't want to do it anymore, that this wasn't part of the plan. Marcus swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay level. What plan? He asked. I don't know, she said. But then something happened. What? The girl's breath shook. The floor broke, she whispered. The woman fell. She hit something. Marcus's eyes widened. Clarice fell? She didn't get hurt bad, the girl continued quickly. She stood up after. But then she saw me watching. And she screamed for him to get me. And he did. Gerald. Marcus felt his entire world shift, pieces snapping into place like a puzzle he never wanted to solve. But the girl wasn't finished. He told me, she said, lowering her voice, that if I ever told anyone what I saw, he'd make sure I disappeared. Because the woman didn't want anyone to know. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Not because of the threat, but because he realized why they were so desperate to silence her. Clarice's injuries during that so-called incident he was blamed for. What if they didn't come from him? What if they came from this house? From that fall? From something Gerald staged, or manipulated, to frame him? Marcus inhaled slowly. You did good telling them, he said gently. You did the right thing. She nodded, but her eyes darted back to the house with dread. Marcus followed her gaze. The porch creaked. A gust of cold air whistled through the gap beneath a broken window. The house felt alive with secrets. The detective stepped forward. Mr. Hale, he said, we need to check inside. As the property owner, you can accompany us if you wish. Marcus hesitated, glancing back at the girl. It's okay, she whispered. I'll wait. Marcus nodded and stood. The detective pushed the front door. It groaned open, heavy and reluctant. Marcus stepped in behind them. The air inside the house carried a scent of dust, mold, and something faintly metallic. A fallen beam stretched across the floor. Broken furniture lay scattered. A staircase leaned dangerously, railing missing. The detective shined his flashlight deeper into the living room. Watch your step, he cautioned. Marcus looked around, trying to see the scene through the girl's frightened eyes. Where had she been standing? Where had Clarice fallen? Where had Gerald threatened her? The detective moved toward a corner where plaster had cracked apart. Here, he called softly. Marcus walked over. A section of floor was splintered, broken inward. It looked fresh, not years old. Recent damage. Something heavy, or someone, had fallen violently. Marcus knelt, touching the broken wood. Then something else caught his eye. Under the beam. Barely visible. A thin piece of fabric. Marcus reached for it, tugging gently until it slid free. A torn scrap of expensive silk. Like gold. Patterned. His breath froze. Clarice's scarf. The one she claimed Marcus ripped during the argument she accused him of. But this wasn't from his home. It wasn't from him. It was here. At the house. At the place the girl saw her fall. The detective leaned in. That hers. Marcus nodded slowly. She wore this the night she accused me. The detective exhaled sharply. Well, he said, that changes everything. Before Marcus could respond, an officer shouted from downstairs. "Detective, you need to see this." Marcus and the detective rushed toward the basement door. The officer stood at the bottom of the steps, shining his flashlight across the floor. There, half buried under debris, was something small and silver. The detective stepped down, retrieved it with a gloved hand and held it up. A voice recorder. Half cracked, but intact. The world tilted around Marcus. "Sir," the detective said, eyes sharp, this might hold every answer." Marcus's heart pounded in his chest. But before anyone could move, a sudden violent crash echoed from outside. The girl screamed. The detective spun around. What was that? Marcus sprinted toward the door, bursting out onto the porch, only to see the cruiser that held the girl, with its back door wide open, the blanket on the ground, the girl gone, and across the street, a black SUV speeding away. Caleb stepped out of the elevator and into the quiet hallway of the office floor he rarely visited. It was early, too early for most staff to be in, yet a thin strip of light shone from under his legal advisor's office door. The sight stopped him mid-stride. He had come here hoping to clear his head before the day exploded with meetings, hearings, and more citywide attention on the little girl with big eyes and a bigger heart. But this unexpected glow, felt like a warning, one he couldn't explain yet. He walked closer. The corridor was so silent he could hear the faint hum of the building's air system. The polished floors reflected the morning light from the high windows, but somehow, everything felt off. Caleb had a strange instinct, an old sensation he hadn't felt since his early business battles, when someone in his inner circle was about to betray him. He reached for the door handle. But before he could twist it, a muffled voice floated through the wood. A man's voice. A voice he recognized. His heart dropped into his stomach. It was Harold, his longtime attorney. The man who had represented him for years. The man he trusted. The man who always told him, "I've got your back." And Harold wasn't alone. A second voice, lower, calmer, too controlled, responded. Caleb didn't recognize it. He leaned slightly toward the door, listening. "He still hasn't figured it out?" the unknown man asked. "No," Harold replied. "And he won't. Not as long as he's distracted with that situation. The girl, her family, everything has him emotionally vulnerable." Perfect timing. Caleb felt his chest tighten. Perfect timing? Emotionally vulnerable? Blood pounded in his ears. Another pause. Papers rustled. Harold sighed. "He practically handed the leverage to us. I told you he'd fall for it eventually." All these years, Caleb never saw the signs. Caleb's fingers trembled on the doorknob. Leverage? Fall for it? What were they talking about? He pressed his ear closer. The unknown man spoke again. "So we proceed tomorrow?" "Yes," Harold said. "By the time he realizes what happened, the contracts will already be filed. We get controlling interest. He loses everything he built." Caleb's breath froze. Controlling interest. Contracts filed. Loses everything. They were planning a corporate takeover. Right under him. From inside his own trusted team. A sharp chill burst down his spine. For a moment he felt the old version of himself, the cautious, hardened businessman, return. The Caleb who had survived boardroom ambushes and economic storms. The Caleb who once trusted no one. But now betrayal came from the last place he ever expected. Harold, his attorney, his friend. Caleb stepped back, his pulse racing so loudly he feared they might hear it through the door. The conversation continued. "Once everything transitions," Harold said, "we cut ties cleanly. He'll be forced out. Publicly, of course, we blame mismanagement. Maybe even emotional instability, easy enough right now." The unknown man chuckled. "Yes, the story writes itself. He's running around buying milk for random kids in grocery stores. Investors already have questions." Caleb's hands curled into fists. They were mocking him. Mocking his kindness. Mocking the moment that changed everything. And they wanted to destroy him for it. He took 2 shaky steps backward. His mind spun with disbelief, fury, and a rising storm of calculations. what evidence he needed, who he could trust, how fast he could shut this down. But then, a new sentence froze him entirely. Harold said quietly, almost cautiously, "And the girl, what about her? She's become a complication." A cold wave washed over Caleb. A complication? He leaned in again, heart pounding against his ribs. The unknown man replied, "She's just a kid. But attention follows her now. The media eats up the story. If she connects dots she shouldn't, it will make everything messy. Her situation already pulls sympathy to him." Harold cleared his throat. "So what do we do?" A slow exhale came from the other man. "We make sure she's not anywhere near him when this unfolds." Caleb's stomach dropped. He felt every muscle in his body tense. "What are you suggesting?" Harold asked. "Nothing drastic. Just interference. Someone will visit the neighborhood, apply a little pressure. Make the family step back. Maybe remind them of consequences." Caleb's heart felt like it stopped. Pressure? Consequences? Someone visiting her home? No, not her. Not her family. They had no idea what he would do, what he was capable of, if anyone threatened that little girl. The girl who reminded him of a promise he made long ago. The girl who gave him a chance to be human again. The girl who didn't see him as a millionaire, just a man willing to help. And now she was in danger because of him. He took another step back. But the heel of his shoe hit the wall, and the faint tap echoed down the silent hallway. Inside the office the voices stopped. A chair scraped. "Did you hear that?" the unknown man asked. Caleb held his breath. Every muscle locked. Harold's voice followed, quieter, but suspicious. "Someone's out there." Caleb looked toward the elevator. If he ran now, the sound of the doors opening would give him away. If he stayed, they might open the door and see him. He glanced down the hallway. Only one option. He slipped into a small side room used for office supplies, leaving the door open just a crack. Footsteps approached the hallway. Slow. Measured. Searching. Harold's voice was closer now. "Hello? Anyone here?" Caleb pressed himself against the wall inside the dark closet, heart thundering. He could see the shadow of Harold's shoes through the sliver beneath the door. Another pair of shoes stood beside him, the unknown man. They stood silently, listening. Harold murmured, "Maybe it was the cleaning crew?" "No," the other man whispered. "Someone was here." Caleb's pulse hammered. A moment later, the shadows receded. Footsteps moved away. He waited, counting the seconds, forcing his breath to stay quiet. 30 seconds. 60. 90. Finally, the office door closed again. Caleb slipped out of the closet, checking the hallway. Empty. He didn't look back. He walked to the elevator with a new fire burning in his chest. A fierce, protective anger combined with a dawning realization. This wasn't just about business. This was personal. And now, someone else he cared about was at risk. As the elevator doors closed, Caleb whispered to himself, "They're not touching her. Not ever." But as the elevator began its descent, his phone buzzed. A message. From an unknown number. He opened it. A single sentence glowed on the screen. "Keep the girl out of this, Caleb. Last warning." His breath caught. They already knew he heard them. And now the danger was far closer than he imagined. Caleb stared at the glowing message on his phone, the elevator walls closing around him like a tightening trap. "Keep the girl out of this, Caleb. Last warning." His finger hovered above the screen, but he didn't dare respond. Every instinct told him the message wasn't a threat meant to be debated. It was a warning issued by someone who believed they had already cornered him. The elevator dinged and the doors slid open into the lobby, quiet, still waking up, morning sunlight spilling across polished floors. But Caleb no longer heard the familiar hum of the building, or the distant shuffle of early staff arriving. All he heard was his heartbeat. Loud, heavy, violent. He reached the parking garage, hands still trembling, and slipped into the back seat of his chauffeured SUV. His driver turned slightly. "Good morning, sir." "Where to?" "Just drive," Caleb said sharply. The driver blinked in surprise, then pulled out of the garage. Caleb leaned back in his seat, eyes fixed on the phone in his hand. He replayed every word from the conversation he had overheard, every threat, every insinuation. Pressure. Consequences. A visit to her neighborhood. His jaw tightened. This wasn't business maneuvering. This was deliberate intimidation, an attempt to cut him off from the very person who reminded him why he still had a soul left. Little Mariah. She wasn't part of this world. She wasn't part of the cold corporate wars or the quiet battles for control. She was just a child who needed help, a child who trusted him. And now she was in danger because of him. But who sent the message? Harold? The unknown man? Someone else in the shadows of the hostile takeover? His instincts said the message came from the second voice in that office, the man he hadn't seen. His tone, his certainty, the way he spoke about interference, it matched perfectly. Caleb exhaled slowly, trying to steady himself. He needed answers. He needed leverage. And he needed to make sure nothing touched Mariah or her family. But first, he needed to understand the full extent of the betrayal. He opened a secure folder on his phone, one he rarely used, one that contained files from years ago when business had been war and trust was a luxury. Inside were contacts he hoped he would never need again. But today he needed them. He clicked on the first name. A man answered almost instantly. Caleb. It's been a long time. Caleb took a breath. I need information. Everything you can gather about Harold and anyone he's been meeting with privately. Especially in the last 4 months. The voice on the other end didn't hesitate. Understood. Give me 24 hours. Caleb lowered his voice. And there's a child involved. I need to know if anyone has been asked to approach her or her family. The man paused. Is she in danger? That's what I'm trying to prevent, Caleb said quietly. The tone shifted. I'll prioritize it. Caleb ended the call just as the SUV merged onto the main street. Morning commuters sped past in the opposite direction, unaware that his entire world had just tilted. He rubbed his forehead and closed his eyes. For a moment, memories flooded him, moments from his past he buried long ago. Another child. Another promise. Another time he failed to protect someone. He swallowed hard. He refused to repeat that mistake. Not now. Not again. The driver glanced up at the rearview mirror. Sir, you look pale. Should I head home? Your assistant said you had a light morning. Home. Where silence lived in every corner. Where loneliness greeted him like an old companion. No, Caleb said. Take me to Redwood Heights. The driver hesitated. The neighborhood from yesterday? Yes. The man simply nodded. On our way. Redwood Heights was quieter in the early afternoon. Children weren't out yet. Cars sat parked crookedly along the narrow street. A few older residents swept porches or watered small plants. But something felt different. Caleb stepped out of the SUV slowly, scanning the street. His eyes were drawn instantly to the small 2-story home with peeling paint and a dented mailbox, the one belonging to Mariah's mother. It looked still. Too still. He approached the front gate, noticing a faint set of footprints in the dust, fresh enough that someone must have come earlier. Someone he didn't recognize. A man, tall judging by the length of the steps. Heavy-soled boots. Not from this neighborhood. Caleb's stomach tightened. He knocked gently. Silence. He knocked again. After a long moment, the door cracked open. Mariah's mother, Denise, stood in the doorway. Her eyes were red. Not tired, worried. Very worried. Denise, he said softly. Are you okay? She glanced over his shoulder before meeting his eyes again. Caleb, I wasn't expecting you. I know. But I need to talk to you. Her hands tightened slightly on the edge of the door, as if she wasn't sure whether to let him in or keep him out. Is everything all right? He lowered his voice. Has anyone visited you today? Anyone you don't know? Her eyes flickered. Fear. Then denial. No one important, she murmured. He stepped a little closer. Denise, please. I need you to trust me. She swallowed hard. A man came earlier. Said he was checking on the neighborhood. Asked questions about Mariah. If she's been speaking to anyone new. If we needed help. But his questions felt wrong. What exactly did he ask? Caleb pressed gently. She hesitated. He asked if we've talked to you since yesterday, and if I plan to let Mariah get close to you. Caleb felt a cold rush down his spine. Did he threaten you? Her voice cracked. He didn't need to. The way he looked at my daughter, that was enough. Caleb closed his eyes for a heartbeat, fighting the surge of anger rising inside him. He opened them again. Where is Mariah now? In her room, she said softly. I told her to stay there until I figured out what was going on. Good, he whispered. You did the right thing. Denise finally opened the door wider. Caleb, what's happening? Why would someone care about a little girl? Why would they come to my home? He took a deep breath. He had to tell her something. But not everything. Not yet. There are people trying to put pressure on me, he said slowly. People who believe threatening the people I care about will get them what they want. Her eyes widened. People you care about? Yes, he said quietly. You. And Mariah. Denise looked down, processing his words. Then she whispered, So what do we do now? Caleb glanced toward the street, calm for now but crawling with danger beneath the surface. We protect your daughter, he said, and we find out who's behind this. Denise nodded, her voice shaking. How do we do that? Before he could answer, a faint sound echoed from outside. A car door closing. Not his driver. Another vehicle. Another presence. Caleb's eyes sharpened as he stepped to the front porch and looked toward the street. A black sedan sat at the end of the block. Unmarked. Windows tinted. Engine running. Watching. Caleb felt his jaw clench. They were already here. Watching the house. Watching him. Watching the girl. And then, the rear window rolled down slowly. Caleb stepped forward instinctively, shielding the doorway with his body. A man's silhouette appeared behind the dark glass. He lifted a phone, pointed it toward Caleb. A picture. He took a picture, and the car sped off. Denise gasped. Caleb turned back toward the house, his expression changing, hardening into something fierce and unbreakable. They just made a mistake, he said quietly. But as he spoke, his phone buzzed again. Another message. This one made his blood turn to ice. Back away, Caleb. Or the next visit won't be so polite. Caleb's thumb hovered over the screen, the newest message burning into his vision. Back away, Caleb. Or the next visit won't be so polite. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. The words felt heavier than anything he had faced in years. Not even the coldest corporate wars had struck him like this, because this time it wasn't about money. It wasn't about loss of status or control. It was about a child. A child who trusted him. A child who could be hurt if he miscalculated even once. Behind him, Denise watched him with fear tightening her expression. The way she clutched the doorframe made it clear. She knew the message wasn't good news. Caleb, what did they say? She asked quietly. His jaw locked. He turned his phone off completely and slipped it into his pocket. Some messages didn't deserve the dignity of a response. He looked at Denise gently. Let's go inside. We can't talk out here. She nodded and stepped aside. He entered, closing the door behind them. The house was small, lived in, warm with family photos covering the wall. Mariah's drawings hung on the fridge, bright colors, crooked shapes, glitter still clinging to the edges. Innocence captured in crayon and paper. It made the threat outside feel even more monstrous. Denise motioned him toward the living room, but her voice trembled. Caleb, tell me what's going on. I deserve the truth. He inhaled. And then he told her, not everything but enough. There are people who want control of my company, he said slowly. They've been planning it for months, maybe longer. And now that I'm helping Mariah, they're using that to push me into a corner. Denise's hand drifted to her chest. But why would they care about her? She's just a little girl. Because they think I care too much, Caleb replied. And they're right. Denise blinked back sudden emotion. So they came here to scare us? To send a message? Yes. A moment of heavy silence fell over the room. Then, very softly, Denise whispered, Are we in danger? Caleb's expression didn't falter. His answer was calm, controlled. Not if I can help it. And I can. She studied him, searching his face, looking for hesitation, uncertainty, anything that might suggest he was bluffing. She found none. "Where's Mariah?" Caleb asked. "In her room," Denise said. "She's been drawing. I didn't want her to feel frightened." "Good. Leave her there for now." He looked around the house. Small, fragile, too easy to reach from the outside. The windows were old, the locks flimsy. The neighborhood was kind, but kindness didn't stop people with intentions as dark as the ones watching them. He turned back to Denise. "Pack a small bag for her," Caleb said. Denise froze. "A bag?" "Yes. Clothes. Essentials. I'm taking both of you somewhere safe." Denise shook her head. "Caleb, I can't just leave. I have to work, I have to." "Denise." His voice softened, but it carried an unshakable resolve. "I would never ask if this wasn't necessary." She stared at him, uncertain, torn, overwhelmed, but deep down she felt the truth of his words. After a moment she nodded. "I'll pack her things." When she disappeared down the hall, Caleb stepped into the kitchen, pulled out his phone again, and turned it on only long enough to make one secure call. The man from earlier answered immediately. "Caleb." "I need protection," Caleb said quietly. "For a woman and her daughter." "Immediately." "How many agents?" the voice asked. "4. Unmarked cars. Discreet. I want eyes on their home for the next 24 hours, even after they leave." "Where are they going?" "I'll send an address." "It's safe." Pause. "Understood." "And listen," Caleb added, lowering his voice even further. "If anyone approaches this house again before my team arrives, do not engage. Just track them. I want to know exactly who it is." "Consider it done." Caleb hung up and leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. For once, he wished he could shoulder all the danger alone. He wished this fight, the betrayal, the threats, the shadows circling him, didn't involve innocent people. He wished he didn't feel so much. After a moment, he looked toward the hallway. Denise stood there again, holding a small purple backpack. Mariah peeked from behind her, eyes wide, uncertain. When she saw Caleb, her face brightened instantly. "Mr. Caleb," she said softly. "You came back." The sound of her voice pierced him in a way nothing else could. He forced a gentle smile. "Of course I did." Mariah stepped forward, holding a drawing, a scribbled picture of him holding a carton of milk, a little girl beside him with a big smile. "I made this for you," she said shyly. "You looked sad when you left yesterday." His heart squeezed. He knelt down. "Thank you. It's beautiful." She beamed, unaware of the storm swirling around her. Denise cleared her throat. "Mariah, sweetie, we're going on a little trip. Just for a bit." Mariah looked confused. "Where?" "A safe place," Caleb said. "Where you and your mom can relax." "Are you coming too?" she asked. "Yes," he said, "for a while." "Okay," she whispered, trusting him without hesitation. And that trust, pure, undeserved, was exactly why he had to protect her. They stepped outside. The air was thick with tension, but the street looked empty again. Too empty. Caleb's driver hurried around the SUV and opened the back door. "Sir, everything all right?" "For now," Caleb said. Denise guided Mariah inside, sitting beside her. Caleb walked around to the other door, but just as he reached for the handle, a glint flashed in the corner of his eye. A reflective surface. A camera lens. Someone across the street, hidden between two parked cars, stood half-crouched, angling a camera toward the SUV. Caleb straightened slowly. The photographer stiffened, realizing he'd been spotted, and immediately bolted. Caleb didn't hesitate. He sprinted. Feet pounding the pavement, breath sharp, adrenaline surging. The man ran fast, weaving between cars, heading toward a narrow alley. Caleb chased him like a man possessed. "Hey!" he shouted. The man didn't look back. Caleb pushed harder. His shoes slapped the asphalt, closing the distance inch by inch. He could almost grab the man's jacket when the photographer reached a black sedan. The same one from earlier. The door flew open from the inside. The photographer dove in. The sedan screeched away, tires screaming against the road. Caleb stopped at the corner, chest heaving, watching the car disappear. They were organized, coordinated, already monitoring every movement. He walked back to the SUV, breathing hard. Denise was watching him through the window, worry etched across her face. He opened the door and climbed in. Mariah looked up at him nervously. "Mr. Caleb, why were you running?" He forced himself to smile gently. "Just stretching my legs a little." But inside something had shifted. This was no longer about a takeover. This was no longer about corporate betrayal. It was an attack. A warning. A line crossed. Caleb looked out the window as the SUV pulled away from the curb. His voice was quiet, controlled. "They want a war," he said under his breath. "Now they'll get one." But just as he finished the sentence, his phone buzzed again. A number he didn't recognize. A voicemail. He pressed play. A distorted voice whispered, "You can run her around all day, Caleb, but you can't hide her forever." And then, a child's soft laughter echoed behind the voice. Mariah's laughter. Recorded. Captured. Used. Caleb's blood froze. His world tilted. And for the first time in years, he felt true fear. Morning always had a way of exposing truths that the night tried to bury. And on this particular morning, as a gray haze rolled across the sky, Maya woke with an uneasiness she couldn't explain. She slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to disturb her father, who was finally sleeping after nights of anxiety-filled pacing. He had spent the last few days dealing with endless meetings, attorneys, accusations, and through it all, Maya had been trying to stay brave. But today felt different, like something was shifting, like something had been waiting for her. She walked into the living room and froze. There, lying on the table, was a thick, folded envelope. Her name written across the front in sharp, elegant handwriting. Maya felt her heart skip. She hadn't seen handwriting like this since. No, that couldn't be possible. Her small fingers trembled as she slowly picked it up, her breath catching when she recognized the seal on the back. A circle with a tiny winged lion. The same symbol that appeared on every document from her mother's side of the family. She hadn't heard from them in years. Not since the day they left without saying goodbye. Her father had told her they traveled a lot, worked overseas, moved from place to place. But even as a child, Maya sensed there was more to the story, something he chose never to explain. She looked toward her father's closed bedroom door. Should she wake him? Should she hide the letter and pretend she didn't see it? Before she could decide, a soft knock suddenly echoed through the apartment. She stiffened. Who would visit this early? She tucked the envelope under her shirt, pressed it against her chest, and cautiously walked to the door. "Who is it?" she called out. A voice answered, deep, calm, but unfamiliar. "Delivery for Mr. Bennett." Her father. Another delivery? But this voice didn't sound like the usual mailman. Her instincts warned her. She stepped back. "Leave it at the door," she replied. There was a pause, barely a second long but enough to feel wrong. Then footsteps faded away. She waited a moment, peered out the peephole, and exhaled shakily. No one was there. Just a box on the floor. She didn't touch it. Instead, she went straight to her father's room and knocked softly. "Dad? You awake?" A tired groan responded. A moment later he opened the door, hair tousled, face weary but warm. "Maya? What's wrong?" She held out the box. There was a delivery. But something felt strange. Her father's eyes sharpened instantly. He took the box, studied it, then nodded. "Good instinct," he murmured. "Let me check." He carried it to the kitchen, retrieved a small pocket tool, and opened the box with a precision that made Maya's stomach twist. Inside was nothing but shredded paper. But her father didn't look relieved. He looked worried. "Dad, what does it mean?" He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing to worry about. Probably just a mix-up." She wasn't convinced, but she didn't push. Her father always tried to protect her from things he felt she shouldn't carry. And right now he was carrying more weight than any man should. Hours passed. The day moved slowly. Maya kept the envelope hidden the entire time, feeling it burn against her skin like a secret begging to be read. Finally, when her father stepped out to take a call, She slipped into her room, locked the door, and sat on her bed. Her fingers shook as she opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, thick, official, embossed. Her breath hitched. It wasn't a letter. It was a court document. Her eyes scanned the page, and every word felt heavier than the last. Maya Bennett, biological custody petition. Filed by Eleanor and Charles Whitford. Her mother's parents. The grandparents she barely knew. The ones who vanished from her life without warning. The ones who never visited, never called, never sent a birthday message. The ones who now wanted custody of her. Her chest tightened. Why now? Why when her father was at his weakest? Her pulse hammered through her ears. She flipped the paper, reading the attached statements. Accusations. Claims. Assertions that her father was unfit due to legal instability. It was a lie. All of it. Her hands tightened around the edges of the paper. They weren't trying to protect her. They were trying to take her away. From the only person who ever stayed. A sudden knock on her bedroom door made her jump. Maya? You okay? Her father asked gently. You've been quiet. She stuffed the paper under her pillow. I'm fine, she answered, trying to steady her voice. He entered, his expression softening. You sure? You look a little pale. She forced a small smile. I'm just tired. For a moment, he studied her the way only a parent could, reading what she didn't say. Then he nodded slowly. All right, but remember, you can talk to me about anything. His words, warm and sincere, stabbed her with guilt. She wanted to show him the document. She wanted to scream, cry, ask him why they were doing this. But she didn't. Not yet. She needed to understand more. Because the timing wasn't a coincidence. The accusations against her father. The lawyer abandoning him. The mysterious box. Now this. Something sinister connected them. And Maya was determined to find out what. That night, long after her father fell asleep, Maya crept out of bed and unfolded the custody document again. She studied every signature, every symbol, every legal term. Then one name caught her eye. The attorney representing her grandparents. Her stomach dropped. It was the same lawyer who abandoned her father in court. Her hands froze. Her breath caught. The truth hit like lightning. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a coordinated attack. Someone wanted her father destroyed. And they wanted her pulled away from him. Before she could process it, a shadow passed the window, too fast to be a bird, too fluid to be a moving branch. Maya's heart lurched. She wasn't alone. She stood slowly, tiptoed toward the window. And then, a quiet, deliberate tap echoed through the glass. Once, twice. She froze. Another tap. Someone was outside her window, watching. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She backed away, hands shaking, whispering to herself, "This can't be happening." But it was. And whoever was out there wasn't leaving. The tapping came again, soft, deliberate, too controlled to be the wind. Maya froze where she stood, her hand hovering midair above the kitchen counter. For a moment she didn't breathe. The apartment had always felt safe, quiet, predictable. But now the air felt different, heavy, as if something unwelcome had slipped into the night and settled outside her window. A second tap. This time slower and closer. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to move. The living room was dim except for the faint glow from a street lamp bleeding through the blinds. Shadows stretched across the floor like long fingers reaching for her. She stepped toward the window, her heart knocking against her ribs. Behind her, her younger brother's school backpack sat open on the couch, the edges of a math worksheet sticking out. Something normal, something familiar, something that suddenly felt too fragile. Another tap. Maya's breath hitched. Whoever was outside wasn't trying to hide. That was the part that chilled her. They wanted her to know someone was there. She reached for the blinds, her fingers shaking. Why tonight? Why now? After days of progress, after returning to some small sense of peace, why did danger have to slip back in? She pulled the blinds apart just enough to see. And her blood ran cold. Someone in a dark coat stood directly outside the window, too close, too still. The person wasn't looking away or pretending to be passing by. They were looking right at her. Their hood was drawn low, hiding most of the face, but their posture radiated intent. Not curiosity. Not confusion. Purpose. A chill crawled up Maya's spine. She stumbled back from the window, her pulse accelerating. "SM." Her voice trembled, barely audible, as if she feared speaking too loudly would break whatever thin barrier existed between danger and safety. Footsteps approached behind her, slow, cautious. "Maya?" Sam's voice appeared in the hallway. "You okay?" She swallowed hard, pointing toward the window with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. "Someone's out there." He stiffened instantly. Sam wasn't the kind of man to panic easily. But something in Maya's tone, something raw and frightened, made him move faster. He crossed to the window and pulled the blinds open enough to peek out. The figure was still there, standing in the exact same place, unmoving, watching. Sam's jaw tightened. His voice dropped into a low whisper. "Get back." Maya backed away, clutching her arms to her chest. Her legs felt weak, her mind buzzing with an anxious mix of questions. Who is that? Why here? Wasp. Sam didn't hesitate. He stepped away from the window, went to the front door, and locked it again, even though it was already locked. He checked the chain twice, making sure it was secure. Then he dialed his phone. But before the first ring could connect, the figure outside tapped once more. This time harder, louder, almost like a warning. Maya flinched. Sam pressed the phone to his ear, his expression sharpening. But Maya knew him well enough now to see the worry beneath it. Sam was a protector by nature, but fear wasn't foreign to him. It just hid beneath determination. "Yeah, it's Sam Whitford," he said into the phone. "I need an officer at my residence." "No. There's someone outside the apartment." "No, not a random person. They've been standing there watching the window. Not moving." "Yes. We're inside." "Yes, I'll stay on the line." While he spoke to dispatch, Maya paced slowly, her mind running through possibilities that all led to darker conclusions. Was it someone from the custody battle? Her grandparents' private investigator? Someone connected to her mother's old life? Someone looking for Samson? Or someone neither of them knew was coming? The unknown made her stomach twist. Sam hung up the call, turning to her. "Police are on the way." Maya nodded, but her eyes drifted back toward the blinds. "He's not moving. It's like he's waiting for something." Sam placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "He won't get near you. You're safe." But Maya wasn't sure anyone could promise that. Minutes passed like hours. The tapping stopped, but the presence remained. And that stillness was somehow worse, because it meant the figure wasn't afraid of being caught. A faint sound echoed from outside, the low hum of an engine turning into the parking lot. 2 flashes of light, police headlights sweeping across the windows, briefly illuminated the living room. Maya felt a small ripple of relief. Sam stepped toward the window, watched as 2 officers approached through the snow, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. They moved toward the spot where the figure had been standing. But when the officers arrived, the spot was empty. Maya's breath caught. "He's gone." Sam frowned, checking both sides of the window. There's nowhere he could have gone that fast. One officer walked up to their door and knocked sharply. Sam opened just enough to speak through the gap. "You said someone was waiting right outside?" the officer asked. "Yes," Sam replied. "Hooded coat." He kept tapping on the glass. The officer shined his light along the building. "Footprints are all over the snow tonight, but there's a fresh set leading toward the ridge. Whoever it was didn't run. Just walked into the woods." Maya felt her chest tighten. "Walk slowly, as if they weren't afraid of being followed." "Do you want us to sweep the area?" the officer asked. Sam nodded firmly. "Yes, please." The officers stepped away, their flashlights bouncing across the snowy path. Maya watched them disappear around the corner, the glow fading until it blended into the night. The apartment felt heavier now, not safer. Sam closed the door and exhaled slowly. They'll find him. Or at least track where he went. Maya hugged herself, rubbing her arms as if trying to warm her skin. "Sam, you saw him. He wasn't normal. He wasn't acting like someone lost or confused." "I know," Sam admitted quietly. "Then who could he be?" He didn't answer immediately. His silence lingered in the room, filling the space like an unspoken truth he wasn't ready to say. Finally, he looked at her with cautious eyes. "Maya, there's something I didn't tell you. Something about that custody meeting. And I think it might be connected to whoever was outside." Maya's heart dropped. "Connected? Oh." Sam took a slow breath, stepping closer as if preparing to break something fragile. But before he could speak, a sharp knock echoed from the hallway door. Not the window. Not the police. The hallway. Someone was now standing at the front door. The knock came again, 3 slow, deliberate taps. The same rhythm Maya heard at the window. She froze. Sam turned toward the door, his posture straightening, tension radiating off him. Whoever had been outside was now just inches away. And this time they weren't hiding. The knocking came again, slow, deliberate enough to make every nerve in Sam and Maya's body scream danger. Sam moved instinctively, placing himself between Maya and the door. "Stay back," he said quietly, his voice controlled but low, every word carrying the weight of authority. Maya backed into the living room, clutching her arms tightly, watching the shadows dance along the walls. Her mind raced. Who could it be? Someone hired by her grandparents? One of her father's enemies trying to use her as leverage? Or something worse? The third knock hit the door, a solid, forceful thud. Sam exhaled slowly, then pulled out his phone, dialing Caleb's number. He needed backup. Someone who could act faster than the police. The line clicked. Caleb's voice answered almost immediately. "Sam? What's wrong?" "There's someone at the front door," Sam said, whispering. "Not random. Not ordinary. I don't know what they want, but they've been watching the apartment and now they're here." Caleb's tone shifted, hardening instantly. "Do not open that door. Under any circumstances. I'm on my way." Sam nodded, though Caleb couldn't see it. "Understood. They're persistent. I don't think they'll leave on their own." "You'll wait?" Caleb asked. "Good. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Keep Maya safe. Do not, understand me, do not let them inside." "I won't," Sam promised. He hung up and turned back to Maya. Her eyes were wide, fear and curiosity mingling in equal measure. "They're not leaving," Sam said softly. "But you stay right here. Don't move. Don't look. Just trust me." Maya nodded, her stomach twisting into knots. She had trusted Sam countless times before, but this felt different. This was personal. This wasn't just someone testing the apartment security, they were testing her and her father and everyone she cared about. The knocking came again, louder this time, as if the person on the other side had grown impatient. Sam pressed himself against the door, peering through the peephole. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, hooded. His face was partially hidden, but even through the obscurity, Sam could sense the confidence radiating off him, an unnerving certainty. He wasn't a casual intruder, he had been sent. "Who is it?" Maya whispered. Sam's jaw tightened. "Someone I've been expecting, but not this soon." He moved back, pulling the chain lock across the door. The man outside shifted slightly, tapping again, not on the door this time but the window beside it. His boots scuffed the floor as he leaned, peering inside with unnatural patience. Maya gasped, stepping back. "He's looking at me?" "Yes," Sam said quietly. "And he wants something from us." The knock came again, then a voice, calm and deliberate. "Sam Whitford," the man said, low and measured. "Open the door. I know you're there." Sam's fists clenched. "Who are you?" The man didn't answer. He only tapped the door again, a rhythmic, deliberate sound, echoing through the hallway like a warning drum. Sam turned to Maya, his expression firm. "Stay behind me. Whatever happens, do not let him see you." Maya nodded, biting her lip as fear and adrenaline collided inside her chest. She could feel her heart pounding in her throat, each beat echoing the uncertainty outside the door. Another tap. This time faster. Urgent. The man was impatient. Sam moved quietly toward the window, checking the locks again. Everything was secure. Then he returned to the door, pressing himself against it, listening. "Tell me what you want," Sam called out, his voice steady despite the tension. No response. Only a faint rustling from the other side. Then silence. Maya held her breath, unsure whether the intruder had left or was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The front door rattled slightly. The chain lock held firm, but the sound sent a jolt of panic through both of them. Whoever this was knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't just testing, they were probing, calculating, measuring weaknesses. Sam reached for the phone again. He dialed Caleb once more, his eyes never leaving the door. Caleb answered immediately, urgency sharp in his voice. Sam? Where are they? Right outside. Hooded man. Not moving. Not leaving. He's patient, Sam said. Do not open the door, Caleb ordered. I'm 10 minutes away. Don't engage. Not under any circumstances. I understand, Sam said, lowering the phone. He turned to Maya. You hear that? We wait. No matter what. Trust me. Maya nodded, but her hands were trembling so violently she could barely hold them in place. Suddenly, a sharp sound came from the hallway, metal scraping against the floor. The intruder was moving. Slowly, deliberately, along the wall, circling toward the side of the building, keeping them in sight. Sam's eyes narrowed. He grabbed a nearby baseball bat from the corner, nothing elaborate but enough to give him some leverage. Stay behind me, he whispered. Maya did as instructed, pressing herself against the wall as Sam edged closer to the door. Then, another voice, this one chillingly familiar. Sam Whitford, the man said again, this time from a spot they hadn't seen before. You think you're prepared. You're not. The girl is the key. The girl always is. Maya's stomach dropped. Caleb had warned them that danger wasn't far behind, but hearing it in person, so close, so precise, it hit her differently. Who are you? Sam shouted, gripping the bat tighter. Someone who will make you regret crossing me, the man replied. And you already have. A soft click echoed from outside. A lock? A camera? Maya couldn't tell, but the sound made her heart skip a beat. Sam held his breath, listening. The man was gone. Or so it seemed. But just as the tension began to ease slightly, another knock, louder this time. 3 quick, firm raps. Sam's eyes met Maya's. They were filled with fear, yes, but also determination. They're not leaving, he said quietly. And they're not alone. Maya's mouth went dry. What do you mean? Before Sam could answer, another sound echoed from the hall. Metal wheels on concrete. A vehicle outside. Low engine hum. The black sedan. It had returned. Sam's face hardened. They've been waiting for backup. Maya's chest tightened. She clutched her arms. Then, what do we do? Sam didn't answer. He only stared at the door, listening, calculating. And just when it seemed the man outside might finally make his next move, the doorknob rattled violently. A shadow appeared behind the glass panel. The hooded figure was back. And this time he wasn't alone. Someone sinister is outside, and now they have backup. The rattling of the doorknob echoed through the apartment like a death knell. Maya pressed herself behind Sam, heart hammering in her chest. The hooded figure outside was no longer just a threat. It had become a predator, and now it had reinforcement. The low hum of the black sedan's engine made it impossible to ignore the reality. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmaneuvered if they didn't act fast. Sam's jaw tightened. He gripped the bat like a lifeline. Stay calm, Maya. Trust me. But Maya's trust didn't make the fear in her chest disappear. Every instinct screamed that the danger wasn't just immediate, it was personal. Someone wanted her father, and now her too. The intruders spoke, low, commanding voices muffled by the thick door. Sam Whitford, the hooded figure said, open the door. You know why we're here. Sam didn't move. He took a slow step back, keeping his body between Maya and the door. The door rattled again, harder this time. The intruder was testing it, testing him, testing their resolve. Maya's eyes darted toward the window. The black sedan's headlights were off, but faint silhouettes could be seen moving around the perimeter. They had planned this carefully. Every exit, every angle, every possibility. Her stomach dropped. There was no way out. Sam, she whispered, voice trembling. We can't. He turned toward her, eyes fierce but gentle. Yes, we can. But only if we stick together. Then, as if on cue, the doorknob clicked. Someone tried to bypass the chain lock. Sam's grip on the bat tightened. He could feel the tension rising like the seconds stretched into hours. Suddenly, Caleb's voice came through the speakerphone Sam had set down on the counter. Sam, listen to me, don't engage directly. They're professionals, but I've got eyes on every angle. You're not alone. Relief mixed with fear in Maya's chest. Caleb wasn't just a distant rescuer anymore. He was their shield, coordinating something invisible, something powerful. But outside, the attackers were persistent. The door rattled violently once more. And then, a shadow appeared at the edge of the glass panel. The hooded man raised his arm slowly, revealing something in his hand. A device? A weapon? Sam couldn't tell. But he didn't have to. The intent behind the movement was clear. Maya gasped. Sam, what is he holding? Before he could answer, another sound split the night, the sharp screech of tires. Caleb had arrived. The black sedan's engine roared to life as Caleb's armored SUV skidded to a stop at the curb. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Sam's body tensed. Maya, stay low. Do not come near the door until I say. The door rattled violently once again, then a voice hissed, open it or the girl pays. Maya froze. The words pierced her soul. Her father's enemies weren't bluffing. They weren't just trying to intimidate, they were testing limits, gauging desperation. Caleb's SUV doors flew open. He stepped out, suit sharp, presence commanding, a small earpiece buzzing updates in his ear. Behind him, discreet agents fanned out, surrounding the building, covering every angle. Caleb approached the front door with deliberate calm. He raised a hand, signaling Sam to stand back. Whoever's outside, Caleb's voice boomed, you've made a mistake. The hooded figure paused, but not out of fear. Confidence radiated off him, the kind that comes from preparation and expectation. He didn't move. Step aside, Caleb continued, and this ends peacefully. A tense silence stretched for seconds that felt like minutes. Then the figure shifted. Fast. Too fast. The door shuddered violently. Sam stepped forward instinctively. Caleb's agents moved as one, a coordinated dance of authority and precision. The intruder outside froze when two men in tactical vests appeared, blocking all possible angles of escape. A struggle ensued. The hooded man tried to flee toward the alley, but another agent intercepted him. A brief, tense scuffle. Then silence. Maya stepped forward, trembling as Caleb and Sam both turned to her. She saw the figure now, hands cuffed, hood removed. And her eyes widened. It wasn't just a random intruder. It was someone connected to the custody battle. Someone her father had underestimated. Someone who had planned meticulously. Who is he? Maya whispered. Caleb's expression darkened. Someone who thought he could use fear to control us. But he forgot one thing. This family is stronger than fear. Maya's relief was tempered by shock. The danger was neutralized, for now. But Caleb didn't let her relax. His voice was firm. This isn't over. There are still people orchestrating all of this. Your grandparents, their lawyer, and others you haven't met yet. We've removed the immediate threat, but the war is far from finished. Sam's hand rested lightly on Maya's shoulder. We're not leaving you alone again. Ever. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Not just from fear, but from the overwhelming sense of being protected, being seen, being cared for. And then Caleb leaned down, voice soft but firm. Maya, you've been brave. But from now on, you don't have to face this alone. Ever. For the first time in weeks, Maya exhaled fully. She felt the weight in her chest lift slightly. Yet even in relief, a thought lingered. The hooded man outside was just a piece of the puzzle. The shadows behind him, those orchestrating this, were still out there. Still planning. Still dangerous. And Maya knew, deep in her bones, that her life would never be the same again. But as she looked at Caleb and Sam, at the people who had come for her, who had risked everything to protect her, she realized something else too. She was stronger than she thought. And this time she would not be a victim. The night settled over the apartment, quiet but charged with possibility. Outside, the black sedan's tires disappeared into the darkness. The threat had passed for now. Maya clutched her father's custody documents to her chest. Tomorrow she would fight not just for safety, but for justice, for family, for the life she had the right to live. And in that moment she promised herself, no one would ever control her through fear again. No one.